Hey everybody, welcome back. Once again, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me today is Talmadge Roger Varnado the third.
Again.
Once again. And we also have someone else in front of the camera that you haven't seen just yet. Please give a warm welcome to Louisiana State University and Kansas City Chiefs fan, good friend of mine and producing partner that's behind the camera every episode. You just hadn't seen him in front of the camera yet, but now you have, and here he is, Chris Black.
Just glad you breathed.
That's very long.
Cow, I was about to fall
That's
out of my
very
chair.
long-winded.
Indubitably it was. So Chris Black, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I'm glad
on
you
this
guys
side of
actually
the
let me
camera.
come from behind the camera this time.
It's like, all this time I'm letting y'all come in here. And
Finally, the better face of the three of us, people actually get to see.
That's
You know,
right. That's right.
it was about time that we were two men.
1, 2, 3.
And three's generous if there's anybody else here. Sometimes if people ask me if I have any pets, I'll tell them I just have one monkey at home, and that's the one I see in the mirror. That's my standard
There
answer,
you go.
or a reasonable facsimile
All
thereof.
right, what are we talking about today?
So today, we are talking more about the National Football League.
All right.
We're going to dive into some discussion about the current 2024 offseason. Now, I will remind everyone, we are shooting this a few days before the NFL draft transpires on April 25th through the 27th. We're discussing the offseason free agency and trades that have occurred thus far.
Up to this point.
Talking about some of the bigger names and where they've gone, and we're just going to basically discuss what our opinions are. Do we like the move for the player? Do we like the move for the team? Is it a good fit? What could it mean for this player's new team?
Okay. Sounds simple enough.
It does sound simple enough. So
Until we get a hold of
until we just really have some fun with it. Because one of my goals in life is just to have fun at any given moment, and it's not that difficult to accomplish. All right, so we're going to kick things off with one of the biggest names of the offseason, one of the biggest trades, actually free agency moves. Kirk Cousins to the Atlanta Falcons. Talmadge, what do you think? Is this a good move for Kirk Cousins? Is it a good move for the Falcons?
It's always a great move for the player because he's getting the money that he wants. He's got a starting
Well,
job.
there's that.
What it does for Atlanta, does it put them in the Super Bowl? No. But you got to look at the division they're in. Does it put them in position to win that division? I would call them the favorites. I truly would. I think he's that good. He makes that big of a difference. Now, does he make a Super Bowl difference? Time has told us he hasn't so far, so
Right.
I doubt that changes. And we've had this debate off camera many times, but is he a bottom of a first tier quarterback, top of the second tier? He's in that range. So
Yeah.
Atlanta felt like, I'll put it this way, Atlanta felt like it was a move they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was a move that people knew was coming. And the first day of free agency or second day or whenever it was, it came.
Oh, it was the first day. It was
so-
like within the first few hours, I think.
Yeah, so no one was surprised by it. Ultimately, I think it gets them into the playoffs, but beyond that, probably the same old Atlanta Falcons.
Okay. Chris Black, what about Kirk Cousins' move to the Falcons?
All right, just the blanket statement. I don't really care. Kirk Cousins, forget it. But I think, honestly, if he wanted a better chance at actually winning, he should have stayed in Minnesota. They have the receivers. Who's gonna throw the ball to? Pitts, Drake London, in Atlanta.
And
Bijan Musterson there is going to be running the rock. That's
and whoever they draft.
and whoever they
And
draft
whoever they
in a couple of days.
Well, they did
So-
get Darnell Mooney and Rondell Moore.
and those are two really big high dollar names that even the Cowboys passed up on, believe it or not.
Well, the Cowboys passed up on
I was
everybody.
about to
They
say,
passed up on everybody.
we'll get into
But we'll get
Dallas's
into that later.
offseason in a
But-
little while.
I honestly think he made a mistake.
think Kirk Cousins made a
I think he
mistake?
made a mistake going to Atlanta, and
Okay.
just for the simple reason, look, he's chasing the money. Let's just be honest. He's chasing the money.
Did
And
Minnesota offer him a deal, though?
Well, they did. They couldn't come to a decision. I already looked that up. Trust me, I looked that up just so I can have a good
I'm
answer
glad
for
you
you.
did, 'cause I didn't
I
know.
looked that up.
I
They
never
could
heard
not-
about them making an effort to keep him. I didn't know that.
At least what I read, they could not come to an agreement, and that's what provided. Now, granted, the question is, did they actually offer money, or would they want him to take
Or did they offer him an amount to say that they offered him something, but they offered him something
Possibly.
they knew he
He
wasn't
wouldn't
going to
take.
take.
Now, here's
Well,
the
what
question.
was the number of years? I mean,
Yeah.
was it a 2-year deal, 3-year deal?
Exactly.
Right. He wants the long-term deal to finish out his career.
Why
But
wouldn't he? Yeah.
sure, do you want to have a career like Matty Ice? Sure, fine. Just go be like Matty Ice and be the guy that doesn't really make. He did make a Super Bowl once,
one.
but I think he had a better chance of doing that in Minnesota than he does at Atlanta.
Okay. So here's my thoughts about Kirk Cousins. My initial reaction to you saying, I just don't care. I kind of felt like you felt when I said Larry Bird was my number 3 small forward all the time. Like, how do you not care? I personally am a big fan of Kirk Cousins.
Well, I was thinking maybe we picked the wrong episode to put him in front of the camera. I mean, if he doesn't care.
Yeah, we're off to a great start. He's fully invested in the topic, obviously. Chris is like, why did y'all bring me up here again? Kirk Cousins, don't bring that in front of me, this foolishness and that nonsense.
We want to talk Gardner Minshew right now.
He's
I
funny.
think Kirk Cousins is a great, not to be confused with kind of good quarterback. I genuinely do. If you look at his numbers throughout his career, and I know we're talking about right now, but I'm going to say this. If you look at ever since he became a starter with the Commanders up through last season, he's a guy that is borderline 4,000 yards, 25 to 35 touchdowns. Pretty much
The numbers
every
have
year.
always, the numbers there.
He's there. Last season, in 8 games, and I'm not going to go deep into everybody's stats on this list. We don't need to be here for 7 hours. But I will.
12.
I'm going to do 12 or 7 hours. But I'm going to do this about Kirk. Last season, in 8 games. First of all, he is entering his 13th season. He'll be 36 years old when this season starts. So there is that factor. He had 2,331 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions in 8 games. He averaged 291 yards passing in those 8 games. If you project that over a 17-game season, 4,953 yards, 38 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Again, I think he's a great quarterback. Now, him shifting to the Falcons, do I think it's a good move for him? Do I think it's a good move for Atlanta? I think it's a great move for Atlanta because, and no personal offense, I don't know these guys, they had 2 subpar is a nice way to put it, quarterbacks last year, and Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. They had 2 of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league. I'm just being real. They went from that to a guy that, in my opinion, is at least a low-level Tier 1 quarterback, if not top of Tier 2. He's really that good. The only knock, he's not real mobile. Guess what? Neither was Tom Brady.
No.
Kirk Cousins is a heck of a quarterback. And the question of who's he going to throw to, you named them, but I've got a different outlook. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, I believe we might actually finally see what those guys are made of. For the first time, both those guys are young. Drake London, Kyle Pitts are both entering their 3rd year. Bijan Robinson's entering his 2nd year. If you've been watching the channel, y'all know I'm a huge fan of Bijan. I think Bijan's going to be great anyway. This opens up the offense even more. I think we're going to see it even more dangerous, Bijan Robinson. And I think for the first time in their 3-year careers, Drake London and Kyle Pitts will have a great quarterback rather than guys that you're going, how did they even start for this team? I think you could see Drake London and Kyle Pitts actually maybe not elite level in their positions, but I think you'll start to see, okay, these guys are actually pretty darn good football players. Could things change? Yes. Could Kirk get injured again? Yes. Many things could happen. I don't want to pick too much on Arthur Smith, but that's an advantage too. He's not calling the plays and holding back Bijan's potential and all that. I think this is a great move for the Falcons. Was it a great move for Kirk Cousins? In my opinion, it's kind of a neutral move for Minnesota. Because to your point, he had great weapons in Minnesota. He's got a much better running game now because he got Bijan.
I would agree.
But
with
he had Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson when healthy. He had great weapons around him, so I think he was already in a good position. I think he is still in a pretty good position, and I think he's an elite enough player. He just made Atlanta's situation much
I
better.
think he also looked at the division. I mean,
Right.
You've got Green Bay and Detroit you're competing with, and who knows what Chicago's going to do if Caleb Williams is as good as people say.
Right.
And now you can go to the South where you're competing against teams.
Who's
that,
it? The Buccaneers,
I
the
mean,
Saints.
what the Buccaneers were, what, 9-8 last year and won the division?
Yeah.
They were.
So if you think Kirk Cousins is worth 3 wins, he made the right move.
Exactly. So yeah.
Well, for
I think
Atlanta,
it's great for Atlanta.
from an Atlanta standpoint, it was good because they, like you said, they had nobody at quarterback. One of us could have played quarterback and done that.
They had to do something.
They
I'm
they
more
had
of
to
a
do
receiver
something.
myself, but I understand.
But
well,
you could have done what those guys did.
But my point is when I said I didn't really care, it just look, it's Kirk Cousins. I'm
Oh,
not
we
a
got
huge,
it.
I'm not a huge
Yeah.
fan of his, but I think he would have had a better chance of winning in Minnesota than Atlanta. Was it great for Atlanta? Yes, because they had nobody. They had nobody.
Yeah.
They had to make that
It
change.
was either this
So-
or they got to hope to get one of the other guys we named or draft somebody.
Or
The
draft
Falcons
somebody.
had to change something.
They had to make a change. So it was a
Yeah.
good move for Atlanta.
Well,
Absolutely.
Ryan Tannehill is still out there.
That's true. That's
He
true.
may still be out there after the 2 months from
After,
now.
well, and he might.
He might be. You never know.
All right, so there's our outlook on Kirk Cousins. So off to a great start. Now we talk about a guy that's not quite Kirk Cousins level, but I want to talk about him. Gardner Minshew to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'll start with Chris this time. What do you think, Chris Black? Is this a good move for the Raiders? Is this a good move for Gardner Minshew?
Well, the question is they're going to go into training camp and they're going to wonder, is O'Connell going to be they're going to fight for the starter, right? Because you've got O'Connell, he's played
You gotta give them
a
both a
full,
chance, yeah.
exactly. Minshew just, he's to me, he's a gunslinger. He just runs around, throws the ball everywhere. And that would be something that O'Connell could sit back and really watch and learn since he's his second year?
This will
is
be
his
his
third year.
I think this will be his second year.
Second year. So
Yeah.
you've got a young guy that's going to really need to learn. You got to guard Minshew as a journeyman. So I think it's a good thing for the Raiders. Obviously, Minshew was in Indianapolis last year. He was just the backup. You know that when we start this training camp this year, he's not going to be the starter. It's going to be Richardson, right? As long as Richardson doesn't have any
If Anthony
physical
Richardson's healthy, it's his team.
he's going to be sitting there holding the clipboard, and Minshew's not going to want to do that. So it's a good move for Minshew. It's a good move for the Raiders. I still wish them, and being a Chiefs fan, I still wish them nothing but
Nothing against Gardner Minshew, but you hope he doesn't have a great
I
year.
hope that, let's keep those guys at the bottom of the division.
Okay. Talmadge, what do you think? Good move for Minshew? Is it a good move for the Raiders?
Well, an interesting name on the list because we actually debated if we were going to talk about him. And there's
Yeah.
reasons why we wanted to. And I think you've already hit on both those reasons.
Yeah.
He kind of exemplifies what we're talking about here, the benefit of the team and the benefit or detriment to the player.
Right.
Yeah.
You hit on one. Minshew wants to go there because he can compete for a starting job.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Right.
And to his credit, he's always been that borderline starter. You can win
Yes.
games with Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
Now, is he going to the Hall? Is he going to Super Bowl? Probably not. But you got to win games.
He can
before
go to
do
Super
other
Bowl
things.
if he gets tickets now.
Or if he's a backup.
Okay.
but the point is, he's proven himself enough in the league to where you could do a lot worse than him as a quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And if you put the right players
Just
around
ask
him,
the Falcons. Sorry, go ahead.
and the right system, all of a sudden he can actually lead a team to a playoff. He was a play away from doing it.
He
last
almost,
year.
I was just about to say, he almost did.
The reason why the Raiders are important is, for me, it's hard to understand where the Raiders are. Are they in a rebuild or are they trying to win? It's kind of hard to tell what the moves they're making.
It is.
Because the Minshew move basically says, we're trying to stay afloat and win just enough to where we're not at the bottom, but yet we're not going for it either.
We're not going for the Kirk Cousins.
Right.
We signed Gardner Minshew.
Right. Now, the draft might dictate differently. Again, we keep going back to it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to trade up and get a quarterback. Who knows? So from both sides, it's very interesting. I'd say it's a good move for both, but it's harder for me to say if it's a good move for the Raiders because we don't quite know what they're trying to do.
Right.
But for Minshew, it definitely is.
Yeah, and I concur with that 100%. To me, this is one of the more interesting offseason moves because while he's good enough to start, while he proved that last year, he's not a guy that in my mind, when you really need a quarterback real bad, you go after him. Like he's one of your top 2 or 3, we got to have him. to your point, and nothing against Aiden O'Connell may be the quarterback of the future. We didn't see it last year.
Right.
So to bring a guy like Gardner Minshew over, who you could debate, he deserves to start somewhere. He did pretty well with the Colts last year. He wasn't going to start over Anthony Richardson. Let's not be ridiculous. This is a situation where I'm going to say he probably will be their week 1 starter. I think he'll beat
I would
Aiden
think so, too.
O'Connell out for that position. If he doesn't, I'll be a little surprised. He's a mobile enough guy. Like you said, he's a gunslinger. Is he going to make some mistakes? Yeah. Is he going to throw huge numbers? Not always. He's good enough to help them. So I think it's a great situation for him because he gets a chance to probably start. Here's what's going to be interesting to me because, quite honestly, and Gardner Minshew could surprise us all. Do we see him as a franchise quarterback? I don't.
No.
If he were
So-
a franchise quarterback, he would have shown it long before now.
I concur.
And even if he has a good 2 or 3 year stretch, because there's been guys like the Rich Gannons of the world, got off to a slow start, was seen as a
Right.
journeyman, but when he
Rich
got to the
Gannon's a
Raiders,
perfect
he
example.
was an MVP.
He took off, yeah.
So
Yes,
he
he
might
was.
do something like that, have a career year here or there.
Yeah.
But to sustain greatness and to be a sustained starter, no. He's
I think
already
he's-
proven
he's-
I think he would have shown it by now.
He's a stopgap quarterback.
Then again-
is what he is.
Yeah.
And not to get too off topic, but you mentioned Rich Gannon. There's a guy named Steve Young that took a while, then
Yep.
became a huge star. So, not saying Gardner Minshew can't, but I tend to agree with you. We probably would already know if he were going to be that. So, I don't think that. Here's what's going to be interesting to me. Do they roll with Gardner Minshew as he's our starter this year and he's mentoring Aiden O'Connell, and maybe in another year, Gardner moves on and Aiden takes the reins? Are they rolling the dice on that? Or do they either trade up or do they maybe just draft a guy like Michael Penix Jr. in one of the later rounds and then say, Gardner, you're the mentor, but this is our franchise guy?
I'll put it this way, in my opinion, their future quarterback is not on their roster right now.
Well, and I concur. So
Yeah.
drafting a Michael Penix Jr. or a Bo Nix a little bit later and then saying, Aiden O'Connell, we might be shipping you off. It's nothing personal, or maybe it is. I don't know.
It's a business.
And then Gardner
It's a
Minshew
business. It's a
mentoring an incoming rookie for a year or two. And because, I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers. He backed up Brett Favre for a few years. Jordan Love backed up Aaron Rodgers for a few years.
The one
they could
difference
draft a guy and play
That's
behind
true,
Gardner
but
Minshew.
again, Aiden O'Connell's not seen to be that. I mean,
No. I apologize. I'm saying if they draft a Michael Penix Jr. or
Oh,
Bo
of course,
Nix,
of course.
groom that guy for a year or two, and either one of those guys could be a very good starter. And then Gardner Minshew maybe moves on and goes somewhere else, and maybe
I think he just
You know, he
Gardner
bounces
Minshew.
around.
He'll always be moving.
Yes.
That's his role.
he's not a bad
Right.
quarterback, but he'll probably always go somewhere, and he'll be a reliable backup. Frank Reich was a great backup. Gardner Minshew, I could see kind of having that sort
That's
of
his
career.
career.
So there we go. All right, now these next two quarterbacks, I'll name them both at the same time, and we can kind of discuss them one at a time, but kind of a package thing. Because they both were starting quarterbacks last year. They're both now on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So, Talmadge, I'll start with you, and you can talk about them one at a time or discuss them together. Do you think this was a good move for the Steelers to get these guys? Do you think it was a good move for each of them going to Pittsburgh?
This is a difficult one. I don't understand what the Steelers are doing. Honestly, to me, Russell Wilson was signed first, I believe. Correct?
He was.
Okay. So that tells me they weren't in the Justin Fields running. Because if they were,
Why didn't they just get him
they
first?
never would have taken on Russell Wilson.
Right.
So now you're stuck in a position, and if I'm right, and I could be wrong, maybe they wanted to get them both, but if I'm right, and they didn't know they were able to get the second one, so that's why they got the first one, and it turned out they got them both. What role does Russell Wilson play? He signed a 1-year deal. If he doesn't start and he's on your bench, he's a malcontent. I'm not saying he'll outwardly say anything, but his aura right now is he's not a good locker room guy. When he went to Denver, he had an office in the locker room. I've never heard of that.
I never heard of that until a few seconds
He
ago.
demanded an office in the locker room.
I
Now,
heard that same thing.
he didn't say or do anything necessarily to turn his teammates off, but just that alone, teammates see that and they're already
Yeah.
seeing, okay, you're distancing yourself from us. You're asking for something no one's ever asked for. I don't care what they say. You've got to feel that way when you're on the field. If you bring that to Pittsburgh, okay, and now you've got Justin Fields, how's that going to work? If
How long of
can
a leash does Mike Tomlin give for that?
and if anybody
when
can
Justin
handle it,
Fields
it
on the
is
bench?
Tomlin. I'll give him credit
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
But I think they've created a problem for themselves. Because if I'm the Steelers, I'm starting Justin Fields. Unless I feel like I'm going to the Super Bowl this year, okay, then I'll start Russell Wilson. But you signed him to a 1-year deal, okay?
Yeah.
You're saying your future is Justin Fields, or at least you're going to give him the shot to be
At
the
least,
future.
yeah.
If you think that highly of him and you think you've got a team good enough to go to the Super Bowl, again, I could make the same argument. Why not start him? I just don't understand what they're doing or how this is going to play out. So ultimately, it's a good move because they've got a choice.
Yeah.
But when you combine the two, I think it's a bad move because I think it's going to cause more problems than it solves, at least immediately. Now, if they find Justin Fields and they turn him into their long-term starter, yeah, it's a win. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying
No,
to
I
hedge your
do.
question, but it kind of depends on how it plays out.
Yeah.
I just don't
There's
know.
many components to that.
And for the quarterbacks, for Fields, I think it's fine because he's going to be on their team until that contract runs out at least. Okay?
Right.
For Wilson, I think they're the only ones that wanted him. So it's a good move for him because where else
'Cause now
was he
he's
going to go?
employed. Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it's going to be a good move for Russell Wilson. No, because there's no future for him there. So unless they start him and they win the Super Bowl this year,
Right.
there's no future for him there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Talmadge on that. It's just I feel like Russell Wilson, he had a horrible 2022. He was lost as a goose. I think what you brought up with it, I'd heard the same thing about he needed an office in the locker room. It separates him from the team. It tells them that I'm better than you. He's going to the Steelers. I like the Justin Fields trade. I like that. I think it gives him a new place to go, a new start. He's an electric player. Can he figure it out from a passing perspective? Hey, look, do we know that was something that could have been a problem in Chicago? We don't know that yet because it remains to be seen. But he's electric with his feet. He can make guys look really silly. He's kind of a mini, if you want to call it out, a mini Lamar Jackson in the sense that he can run and can throw. It's just a matter of where he can get the passing down. And so I don't understand, like you said, I don't get the Russell Wilson unless they just felt like they could win now. And I don't think they have the team to win now. They lost Deontay Johnson, although he was probably not the best receiver on the field, but he seemed to be the one it was
He's
the
good
one.
enough that he's a loss. He's a loss.
It's a
without
loss.
him,
It hurts them that he left. But, they've got a good running back. I like Najee Harris. I think
Jalen Warren's pretty good too. They got a couple of pretty good
Exactly.
running
They
backs,
got two
actually.
guys there, and they're as we've already talked about I think y'all talked about it in the previous episode with running backs is everything's going to split backs. And no one is going to be sitting here running with a single back much anymore. It's all going to be that way. So the Wilson pickup is confounds me a little bit.
Well, again, they got him first. Maybe that tells me they didn't know they were going to get
True.
Fields.
That's a valid point. That's a valid point. But I like the Justin Fields going to Pittsburgh. I want to see how that ends up. So
For me, and very similar, the package deal is confusing because my first thought when they signed Russell Wilson, my actual first thought, because I'd never heard about him having the office in the locker room, all that, but my first thought was, okay, this is a good move for Pittsburgh because even though with Russell's age, he may not have 10 more years left, but he's a very good enough quarterback to get them through the next few years. Not trying to pick on anybody, but I'll say the same thing that I said about the Atlanta situation last year. Kenny Pickett, in my opinion, was one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league last year.
he was.
Russell Wilson's a tremendous upgrade. So when they just signed him, first of all, I had no notion to think they would then try to get Justin Fields because my thought would be, why would they do that?
Yeah.
You just got Russell Wilson. He's your starting quarterback, right? He's good enough to start. He's starting over with a new team. He's got, like you said, a good backfield. He's still got George Pickens, Pat Fryermuth, when healthy, is a pretty good tight
And
end.
they've proven they can draft receivers.
And
That's one thing
they
Pittsburgh's
always
done.
draft
They
great
So,
receivers.
and this is a good receiver draft.
And there's a very
so they're
deep
going to get a
receiver
receiver.
draft,
They're
so
going to
yeah.
develop him, and they'll be fine.
And that was my thought was, okay, if it had ended there, my answer would be it's a good move for Pittsburgh. It's a good move for Russell Wilson. Why not? Denver, things were over there. Okay, you're now starting for another team. You're getting the opportunity. Then they traded for Justin Fields. And I will say, man, did they get him like they traded what, a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick? I think Chicago could have gotten a lot more for him.
I don't think they could have, or they would have. I don't think they could have.
I think he's a good enough quarterback.
What you're saying is he's good enough to get more in your eyes, but if they could have gotten more, why didn't they?
And that's the
I mean,
question. and you
I
may
don't
be
think they
right,
could.
but I'm just like, why in the world would no one? I know he had some injuries last year, but to touch on what Chris said, this guy's extremely athletic. And again, another topic within a topic that I'm not going to go too far off on. He's got to be one of the top few most athletic quarterbacks in the history of the league. He's only played 3 years, but I'll put him in that. I'm not saying one of the best, but in terms of pure athleticism,
The day he was
has
signed,
to be.
he was
The
one
day
of
he
the-
was signed, he was in that category. So I think Justin Fields, in my opinion, is a pretty darn good quarterback. You saw the season DJ Moore had last year when he and Justin Fields were both healthy together. They were a formidable pass and catch duo. I think he could have a very good future with Pittsburgh, but I'm like you. I don't know what their thoughts is, and they may not know either. They may have gotten Russell Wilson, and then, we can also get Justin Fields. My thoughts are probably that Russell Wilson will be their Week 1 starter. I'm not saying at this stage of his career he's
the
superior
leader
to
in the
Justin
clubhouse.
Fields, but yes, I think probably he is going to be your starter. And it's kind of sad that Justin Fields, after what he showed in Chicago, that he might have to be a backup for a season. But if the year after, he could be back, if he's fully healthy, he could be to an elite level potentially at the quarterback
Russell
position.
Wilson has to be their Week 1 starter. That's the only
I
way
think
this
so,
works.
too, yeah.
Like I just said, Russell Wilson on the bench, he might not say anything, but that's not what he signed up for. He's too much of a veteran. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He's not going to
proven
make
that he
it.
needs to start,
He's not
yeah.
going to make it easy on you to be on somebody's bench. He didn't in Denver, so he's not going to do it here either.
Yeah.
Especially when you went and got me,
Right.
and a week later you get somebody to replace. No, that's not what I signed up for.
no,
so he
that's
has
true.
to be the starter. Tomlin's even said basically he's the leader in the clubhouse. He didn't give him the job. That'd be foolish to just give him the job.
Right.
But he's basically telling you, read between the lines.
Yeah,
Russell
here's
Wilson's
my
gonna
way of
start.
saying
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
If he's not the starter, what does it say to the team?
It either means
You brought the guy
Yeah.
in. Granted, all three of us have said we're confused by the whole situation,
Yeah.
honestly. But I think if you get to Week 1, if he's not your starter, what are you saying to the team?
I think you're telling
that
the
you brought
team-
that you brought this guy in for a reason.
I'll put it this way:
So-
if Justin Fields turns out to be the Week 1 starter, I mean, if Justin Fields, is the
Yeah.
starter, then Russell Wilson's cut.
Well,
They're not keeping him as a
No,
number
'cause
2
here's the
starter.
thing.
I don't think you can.
Well, but here's the thing. If you bring Russell Wilson over and then he doesn't start, you're basically telling the team, we don't trust him, so you shouldn't either. I mean, it's, as an
Well,
organization.
now it just could mean that Justin Fields came in and was lights out. I mean, I don't want to discourage
True.
that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my point is, Russell Wilson's
But-
not going to want to be on the team as a backup.
Oh, no.
No, he's not.
He won't. It's a 1-year deal. So it's
you
not
know
like they're
they're
going to
looking
lose.
ahead to Justin
they're,
Fields
They're
anyway.
not losing a lot, and Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback next year anyway. So if he beats him out this year, there's really no reason to keep Russell Wilson, unless, like you say, he might get hurt because he has a history.
Yeah.
But will Russell Wilson want to take on that role? And
He
that's-
won't. He'll be disgruntled.
And I think in the end
and-
they're going to say, we'd love to keep you. You're a nice insurance policy, but we think long-term wise, it's going to be a detriment on this team for you to be the backup. See you. There's no financial obligation. It's a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Do you think he would? Let's just say that, as you said,
For the league minimum, by the way.
Right.
Veteran minimum.
So
Yeah.
here's the question. Let's say, as you said, Fields is the lights out in training camp. Would Wilson accept that backup role to help
mentor
mentor
him.
Fields
No.
and then move on. And I agree. I don't think he would.
No.
I
And I-
don't think he
and I
would. I
think-
think his arrogance wouldn't allow
Well,
it.
I didn't
he's
think
never-
of that. He look.
He's
it's
been
not-
the starter for so many
I
years.
was gonna say,
He's not going
he's
to
never-
do
Well,
he's
keep
never
in
had to
mind,
do
guys,
that
I've never
before.
been a big believer in this mentorship crap. These quarterbacks, it's not their job to mentor some quarterback. That's the coach's job. My job is to prepare to play on this football team, and I've got enough worried about getting prepared to play these great defenses they're going to be playing against me. I don't have time to be, well, let me mentor this guy while I'm preparing to play, or let me hold the clipboard. That's not their job. Why would Russell Wilson want to, especially a mentor guy to a team he just got to? Now, if he's been with that team like Seattle, and he's been a
Yeah.
starter for 14 years, and he drafts some youngster, and he's ending up his career, maybe then I'm more invested in mentoring.
Right,
Russell
right.
Wilson's already proven, I still want to play.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
in this league to play. He's still getting the money from Denver. That's why he could sign the league minimum contract with. So he's getting his money already.
Yeah.
He's married to Sierra or whatever, so they got plenty of money. It's not about he wants to play, and if he's
Oh, yeah.
not playing, he ain't interested.
True.
And I wouldn't be either. I really wouldn't.
I was gonna say, and I don't blame him for that. It may sound like we're attacking Russell Wilson. I agree with what you're saying, and I don't necessarily think that's wrong because I think he's proven that he. I mean, let's not forget he was pretty much an elite level quarterback for most of his career. Has he started slowing down some now? Yeah, and who doesn't with age?
Well, and by the
except
way,
Tom Brady
last
and
year,
Drew
if
Brees,
you look
but
at his play last year, his play last
he
year
actually
not
wasn't
bad.
bad.
It
Yeah.
wasn't bad at all.
You look at the stats that you got there.
I say, I've
they're
got
not
his stats
bad
right
stats.
here. 3,070 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He added 341 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He didn't have a bad season.
It was way better than it was the year
The
before.
previous year
Yeah.
was trash.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
last year, he
The only
started
thing
to
I'll
play.
say I kind of felt a little bit bad for Justin Fields. How bad can you really feel? These guys are still in the
Yeah,
NFL. But
yeah.
there's other teams that could use a Justin Fields. So I was kind of like, it sort of stinks that he's going to have to be the backup for even a year because he could start a lot of other places.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think probably Pittsburgh's investing in Justin Fields for their future.
There's
so
no question.
long term, I do think it's a good
There's
move
no
for
question.
him. And for now, in the interim, I think it's a good move for Russell. Is it good for the team? I'm on board with both of y'all. I just don't know because I don't know what it's going to look like. So that remains to be seen.
We're not going to know till August.
We won't. We might not
May
know
not know
till February.
I was about to say
Right.
August is optimistic.
Well, I was saying August in sense that
At the very
you would
least,
at least you
yeah.
would know something from a starting lineup where
Which could
is
change
the core.
throughout the year with both those guys.
With
on
both
the
those
And
guys
they may
being so
just
good,
interchange
yeah.
them. Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to shift to the wide receivers. We'll start with the guy that was mentioned in that previous category, Deontay Johnson, going to the Carolina Panthers. Chris Black, what do you think? Good move for Deontay Johnson? Is it a good move for the Panthers?
I think it definitely gives another receiver for Carolina, and I like that for them. He automatically, I think, is their number one in my opinion. So it provides Young another, that's another weapon that Young needs. He really was running around for his life last year and didn't have anybody to throw to.
Quite a lot, yeah.
And so I think Johnson provides that option, and I think it's a good move for him. And Deontay becomes the number one. I think in Pittsburgh, Pickens was starting to kind of eat away a little bit of that and whatnot. But I think that's a good move for Carolina for sure.
So you think it's good for the player and for the team in
absolutely.
this case?
I think
Yeah.
it helps both.
Okay.
It's good for both.
Talmadge, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's good for both of them. The only thing I would say different from you, and the reason that it might not be good, depending on how that plays out, Young better be able to get him the ball, because he's already proven if I don't get the ball, I'm gonna let you know.
True. That's a valid
That-
point.
that-
I'm gonna
Yeah,
let you know.
you're right.
He could be a bit of a malcontent.
That's
at that
why he's
point.
in Carolina now and
And
still
not
in
Pittsburgh, yeah.
And keep in mind, Pittsburgh didn't have a quarterback that could get him the ball last
Nope.
year. So Young better be the number one pick that he wasn't last year. And again, I'm not blaming him. That's an
Yeah.
organizational problem.
Yeah.
They need to fix their line desperately. But I'm saying the receiver's not going to care about that. He's going to say, well, that's up to the Panthers management to figure all that
Right.
out. All
I'm
I know
here,
is I'm
you're
on
not
the
getting me
field
the ball.
and I'm not getting the ball.
Yeah.
So assuming they can figure that out, it's a great move for both.
Yeah.
Okay. And to me, Yes, I think it's a good move for Deontay Johnson because he becomes a clear-cut number one. In Pittsburgh, he would tell you he's the best receiver, but George Pickens has something to say about that.
Yeah.
Coming to Carolina, yes. Who was their only really viable offensive weapon as far as catching the ball last year? Adam Thielen, who's 33 years old, I think, now. Now, he'd be the youngest guy in this room, but for NFL wide receiver standards, he's not a young guy anymore. No. But Thielen, at the beginning of last year, like the first half of last year, he was putting up some good numbers. Yeah. He's never been a speed guy. He's always been a possession guy, and now he's older. Deontay Johnson is younger, faster, more athletic. He's going to give them a weapon. And Thielen's still good. He can still find openings in the zone. He can still come underneath. He can come underneath and still catch some passes. Deontay opens up the offense. He stretches the field. I think it's a very good move for the Panthers, and I think it will help Bryce Young's professional development quite a lot because now you've got an aging but pretty good receiver and a better young receiver. Yeah. I've now got some other weapons that I can throw to, and again, topic for another day. Some people think Bryce Young was just a waste and whatever. I'm not on board with that. I think we need some more time. Do I think he's going to have a phenomenal career? I don't know yet. Last year's not enough for me to say, well, he's just not any good.
Well, they didn't put him in a position to succeed. Look,
that's my point.
You always need offensive line, no question. I'm not saying that's obvious. We all know that. Yeah. But especially when you're dealing with the shorter quarterbacks.
5'10" and a rookie.
You're going to have a line, and it still stands true. Unless they fix their line, he's not going to be any better.
He's still going to be.
There's no way he can be better. Even with these two weapons, if he can't get him the ball, we've already talked about, he's going to be, the receiver's going to be a malcontent. The quarterback's going to lose another year. It's a wasted year. Yeah. So this is on, what we're really saying here is it's a nice pickup and a good fit, we think, logically.
Right. Yeah.
But if the organization doesn't support that move further, then it's not going to matter.
No.
Well, there's always the draft.
Well, and they better utilize the draft wisely because
looking at some guards and tackles.
So Bryce Young's future outlook is something, maybe a topic for another day. But I do think this is a good move. I think it's a good move for Deontay, and I think it's a very good move for the Panthers. All right, next guy on the list, Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. Talmadge, what do you think? Good move for Diggs, good move for the Texans.
Good move for Diggs, if there is such a thing. I'm going to surprise some folks. I don't think it's that great of a move for the Texans, and I'll tell you why. If you look at Diggs' season last year, I think he had, one 100-yard game? It was like the third game of the season?
It was, I think you're right,
So that means he went, 14 weeks with a 100-yard season? I mean, a 100-yard game? Mm-hmm. He's already proven he can be a malcontent.
He's entering his 10th season also.
He's not the player that he used to be. People don't want to say that. They're going off the name. But if you look at tape on him last year, if you look at results last year, he's not that player. Here's my problem. Nico Collins and Tank Dell, if he's healthy, to me, I'm not going to say they're better because I'm not going to say Diggs has dropped that much. But I think I'd rather roll with those two and draft another youngster. Or if I'm going to trade for a veteran receiver, I'm going to trade for a veteran receiver that's not going to bring attitude. I don't want that attitude on my team, especially for a player who last year didn't produce like his reputation suggests he produced. This reminds me a lot of, and not because of temperament, because the temperaments are totally different, but when the Titans traded for Julio Jones a couple of years ago. It didn't work. And I don't think this is going to – I think we're going by a name. I don't think we're going by production. And, again, you've got Nico Collins. You've got Tank Dell. You've got a draft that's loaded with receivers. I would have gone that route, plain and simple. Now, I do like the way the Texans structured his contract, and we'll get into that some other day. But the way they've structured his contract, if he doesn't work out this year, they can cut him, and it doesn't hurt them at all.
That's a brilliant move on their part.
So that move was smart. So for that reason – I'll lean a little bit more towards, okay, maybe it's not a bad move, but I guess I'm saying I don't think it's as good a move as a lot of the national media is saying. They're looking at the name, they're looking at the Texas need, and it makes sense on that level. So they're like, oh, wow, this is going to put them over the top.
It's almost like
I'm not sure it does.
Well, yeah, it's almost like some people are saying, Here's another Houston sports franchise with a blockbuster trade.
Okay.
Yeah. You do get the reference, right? Nobody else maybe does, but
I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
it's kind of like that.
I do remember basketball. But I do
Yeah,
remember.
we're talking about the Rockets, and maybe that's a story for the Talmadge and I have too many inside jokes and stories for another time.
But that name, it's an interesting thing to see play out. I don't want people coming back months later saying I was wrong and he was great. I'm not saying he can't be good for that team.
Right.
I'm just saying there are
We
some
know that he
elements.
can.
Right. There's just some elements that I'm not ready to say, oh, this puts them over the top like some are.
There have been several people flat out already saying, "Oh, they're the AFC favorite for the Super Bowl." Well, I've heard the day he was signed, I started hearing that.
And I don't see. I see they're in the mix for it. Yes.
Don't see that.
But I don't see them.
This puts them
as the number
lower,
one. This
yeah.
might put them third or fourth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But to say they've
yeah,
supplanted Baltimore and Kansas City with this one
and put
move,
Kansas City first. So
Yeah, sorry, Kansas
start
City,
with Kansas City
Baltimore.
because they're the champions. Yeah, so interesting move. I'm not saying it won't work,
Right.
but I'm intrigued to see where this goes.
Gotcha. All right, Chris Black, what do you think about it?
Well, I look, it's definitely a big name that moved, right? I mean, everybody talks about great receivers, and Diggs is usually at the top. Now,
Yeah.
much to what your statement there, yeah, has he dropped? Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's the top of the list. Jefferson's the top of the list. That list.
Jefferson, Chase.
Yeah,
CeeDee
there's
Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb. I mean,
Yeah.
there's other guys that
Adams.
Tyreek
that have
Hill.
passed him.
I mean, yeah.
Diggs is sliding down that list. I do think that is going to.
AJ Brown.
You
Sorry,
know,
go ahead.
boy, you just keep.
Well, you got me
The
thinking
hits
now.
keep rolling here. I think it is going to help.
Marvin Harrison Jr. Sorry,
Well,
go
I
ahead.
can't get a word in.
You liked it better
I
behind me.
like it. You know what? I'm going to go back there. At least when you get rolling, I can take a nap.
Yeah, you can sit back and say, "Jalma and Justin put up with
I get
this."
to record and walk away. But I think he's going to help the two receivers that are there, Nico Collins, and in the sense that they no longer are going to get that double coverage. They're not going to get the best player receiver, the best quarterback. Excuse me.
It'll be harder to lock those guys down.
Exactly. It's going to be one other name that you're going to have to deal with. Yes, is he dropped? Yes, but I still think he's productive. What happened in last year in Buffalo?
Puka Nakua. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. God, you're killing me. But I really seriously think that it's a good move for at least this year. For at least this year.
And like I said, the way they structured the deal, which a lot of people don't know, the day after he signed, they
brilliant.
restructured his deal. I forget how they actually set it up, but they basically what they did was they paid all his bonus money up front.
Oh,
So
okay.
So basically, it's a 1-year deal, even though I think he's got 2 years on the deal. They can get rid of him after 1 year, and there's no cap hit on them at all, or it's very minimal.
That's
so
a
to your
great
point,
move.
I think they're kind of saying what we're saying. Okay, let's see what you got left.
Yeah.
You are a name. You're still good.
Yeah. It's
But-
not like you stink.
But if you can't get back to what you were, we ain't got a fool.
No
with
harm,
you.
no
And
foul.
by that time, Nico Collins got another year under him.
Yep.
Tank
Dell's
Dell's
got another year under him. And we've got 2 years of draft where we can find another receiver.
yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
Brilliant move organizationally. So I will say this about Stephon Diggs. We're pretty much all in agreement. I'll touch on this real quick productivity wise. Last season, I think he did have his only 100-yard game early on, but he finished the season with 107 receptions, 1,183 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And nobody said he was washed up. I just wanted to touch on that. He was still pretty good. However, when I heard he was going to the Texans, I was more like, really? I'm not surprised that a team picked him up. I'm certainly not surprised Buffalo shipped him off. Because by the end of last year, I'm just going to be totally honest. I'm not going to speak for the guy. But watching him play near the end of last year, it looked like he didn't even want to be there.
did.
I was like, he doesn't even
It
care
didn't
to
look
be
like
in
it.
Buffalo.
He
yeah.
didn't want to be there.
He wasn't playing like we know that he's capable. And I was just like, my gosh, I'd be sending you off.
Yeah.
This draft class is laden with talent. You're not playing for me next year. You don't even act like you care.
And they're
So-
over the cap
and
anyway.
to what-
So
Right.
And to what you said, that's pretty much exactly what happened in Minnesota.
yeah, that's what
And
I'm
he
saying.
got to a point in
He got to
Minnesota
a point
where
where
he
he
did the
just
same
didn't
thing.
want to be there, and they shipped him off, and the same thing has
He
happened.
had Kirk Cousins, he had Josh Allen, he was the number one receiver both places, and he just got to a point where he wasn't happy and just didn't want to be there
For
and made it
whatever
very
reason
obvious.
that might
so
be.
Come
him
to Dallas
going-
and mess them up, please.
Yeah,
Please.
I'm all
Come
for
play
that.
with your brother and just mess up
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah.
Please.
his brother kept talking about wanting him to come here.
Come
So
on.
anyway,
Come on.
if you're coming, come on. But anyway, going to Houston to me is an interesting situation. Again, I'm not surprised that a team wanted him. But they got two of the best young receivers in the league. They've got a phenomenal quarterback going into season 2.
Yeah.
I don't know that they needed him. And quite honestly,
It
for me,
surprised me too.
where does he fit in? Okay, you give me a little bit more weapon. I've got Nico Collins. I've got Tank Dell. I could draft.
And they've got Schultz at tight end.
And they've got
Yeah.
Dalton
Well,
Schultz
we
at
didn't
tight
even
end.
talk about that,
Even
mention
if
that.
you're not getting one of the top receivers in this draft, my goodness, give me Ricky Pearsall or Malachi
You can get
Corley.
a second,
You can
third,
plug
fourth
them
round
in
receiver,
there
yeah.
in the 4th or 5th round. They're probably going to do you about as much good. And nothing I'm saying, I'm not trying to trash Stephon Diggs. Like I said, he deserves to be on a roster. I'm not
And the
surprised
number-
somebody
and
wanted him.
like you said, the numbers are still
The numbers
there.
are still good.
I'm just looking at how it fell off as the year went on,
How-
and how his
Yes.
attitude fell off.
His
as the year
attitude
went
really
on.
reflected his productivity. It was very obvious. He didn't care that it was obvious. I'm with you. I don't want that in my locker room. If I'm the Texans coach, I'm building something here. I've got 3 of the best young players in the league. Yes, you've still got talent, but guess what? You can go play for Jacksonville or I don't care who else. Go to the Chargers. Go to the Cowboys. I'm rolling with these 2 receivers. I'm gonna draft a Malachi Corley or a Lad McConkey or whoever, and I'm gonna keep building with my young talent because that's where I see our future going. I don't really need a guy that's past his prime who's still pretty good who might cause problems on the team.
It might be.
That's just me.
It might be the same scenario we just talked about with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unless
yeah.
people, and some people, like you just said, think this. Unless Houston's saying we think we can make the Super Bowl this year,
Right now.
and this guy's going to help put us over the top, then if it
Then
pays
it's worth
off,
it. If
I'll
it
buy
does,
it. And
yeah.
they made the right move, and that's why I keep going back to they restructured this deal. They're basically telling you it's
That
a
right there
prove-it
tells
year.
you that they know that they may not be perfect.
Well, you look at their team overall. What are they? Are they an offensive team or a defensive team? And I'd say they're a defensive team more than they are an offensive team.
Well,
I mean,
That's debatable.
Well, and here's what I'm
beauty
saying.
the beauty of their team is you're exactly. I think it's split because their coach is obviously defensive.
That's
minded.
There's
I was
that.
going there.
There is
But you
that.
got an elite quarterback that makes you an offensive team. So
Yeah.
they've
But
got
he's,
both.
but he's young,
He is,
and he's
he
young. But you've got and not to because we're doing offensive here, and I don't want to get too defense, and I love defense. But they had and doggone it, I can't remember the rookie's name.
Anderson?
Anderson, yes, Anderson Jr. Will Anderson, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I got
That
it on my
sounds
sheet of paper
right.
over there. He was rookie of the year, and defensive rookie of the year.
Defensive,
So you got him, and then they just signed
Hunter.
Danielle Hunter.
Yeah.
And so they're you got a defensive coach, 2 great defensive players. They're looking to obviously do that. I wonder how much are they compensating on the offensive side by bringing him in to try to, like you said, 1-year deal basically because that's what they're saying.
That's
Prove
exactly
it
what it is.
that you're going to do it, and we think we can get further in the playoffs than we did last year.
Oh, there's no question about that. Look, they got
So-
a taste of it last year.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They got a taste of it. And as good as the Ravens were, and yeah, they pulled away at the end. But I'd say
They hung with Texans hung with
halfway
them.
through the third quarter, the Texans were right there.
Oh,
so they're
yeah.
basically saying, we ain't that far off. Now,
And they're not
Patrick
wrong by
Mahomes,
thinking
until he
that.
retires, I think everybody's far off. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I get
you
their
agree?
point of view.
I would agree with that for sure.
But anyway.
All right, so
But we
moving
kind of beat that one
moving
to
on,
death.
yeah.
But
moving on from Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
no.
So Calvin Ridley to the Tennessee Titans. Calvin Ridley entering his 6th season. He's going from Jacksonville to the Tennessee Titans. Chris Black, how are your feelings on this? You think it's good for Calvin Ridley? Is it good for the Titans?
Well, you know what? I like this. I like Calvin Ridley. I liked him when he first came out. He was in Atlanta. He had a great season that first year. He just seemed like every time there was a
He kind of
touchdown,
burst on the scene.
he
yeah.
burst. I mean, he really did. He was just. I had him in fantasy league. I loved him. I was like great. And then the whole betting thing scandal
Yeah.
hit, and then he was down. And so then he came back last year. I wanted him in my fantasy league, but he didn't seem to do a whole heck of a lot.
He might have been happier later that he wasn't.
Yeah, I was very happy I didn't make
He
that
got
change.
1,000 yards.
But
He did.
But the thing is-
1,016 and 8 touchdowns.
the thing is, I for Tennessee, I think that's good for them. That gives them a really good receiver there. I like that he gets a new start. Will Levis is your quarterback. I think he's a young guy that, hey, he needs another set of hands. He needs a weapon. So I really like that. I'm excited to see what Calvin Ridley is going to do in Tennessee.
All right. And now to our Titans fan on the panel.
Who's going to have more to say about it than I do.
Yeah, how do you feel about
Guarantee it.
this?
Well, this is the receiver that we targeted going into free agency. I think it's a good idea, obviously, for the things that you mentioned. Look, they're basically saying, I don't know if Will Levis is my quarterback or not, but we're going to find out.
Right, exactly.
They're doing through free agency.
We're going to find out this year.
Through free agency, not that we're talking about every player they pick, but through free agency, and this one specifically, what they're saying is we're not sitting back and waiting. We're not building through the draft necessarily. We're going to implement through the draft.
Yeah.
But we're going to find out if this is our quarterback, and if he's not, we drafted another one. That's what they're basically saying.
Yeah.
As far as Calvin Ridley go, it's a good move for him because this is what he wanted. Keep in mind, I don't know if you guys know this story, but New England and Jacksonville were the favorites to sign him up until the day he signed with Tennessee. What happened was Ran Carthon, the new GM for the Titans, he got on the phone with Ridley, talked to Ridley, and basically said, you're going to love the way we treat you in Tennessee. And Carthon kept trying to sell him on Tennessee. Ridley stopped him in the middle of the conversation and said, Ran, I'm coming to Tennessee. This is where I want to be.
Huh.
Jacksonville offered him the same amount of money. People don't know this. He left Jacksonville last year. He had 1,000 yards with Jacksonville last year. He had Trevor Lawrence last year.
Yeah.
Ran Carthon sold him on Tennessee in a phone conversation. He bought it. Tennessee shocked the world.
That's a
Thing is,
powerful move by Ran Carthon. I just want to touch on that.
He's
That's
already proven.
impressive.
I don't know how his moves are going to pay out. We don't know yet.
No, but that's-
But Ran Carthon, I'm telling you right now, he's made Tennessee a destination city in the NFL, which I've never said before about Tennessee because it's small market.
No one
but
has.
there's other exactly.
No one
but,
has.
but if you
No
look
one
at
has.
if you look at the Lord Cushenberry signings, all these signings, Pollard, it's Ran Carthon, and I think Tennessee's heading in the right direction. Now, some people say it's a bad move for Tennessee because Ridley's 29. Keep in mind, Ridley didn't play for 2 years.
Right.
He's only going into his 6th season.
Right.
He's
Right.
not.
So he doesn't have that tread on him, and there's still D-Hop for one more year. So now Ridley is not the only guy that you have to guard. So it's going to free both of those up. And I have a sneaking suspicion everybody suspects they're going to draft an offensive tackle in the first round, which they should if Alt is there. If Alt's not there, though, and they don't trade back, their second position is going to be receiver. So they could get a Dunze. If Neighbors drops, if Harrison drops, they're
they
going to
get
get
one of those
They're going to
guys.
get one of those three or an offensive tackle in the first round.
Yeah.
If they happen to get a receiver, now all of us, and it's still a position of need because D-Hop is older.
Because he's about to retire. He's got to be about to retire pretty soon.
I don't think he'll retire, but I don't know if Tennessee resigns him
Well,
because he got a 1-year deal. And if Tennessee's not successful this year, D-Hop's going to want to go where he can win a championship.
that's true, too.
And Houston would be a great place because
he
the
had some
receiver we
good
just
years.
talked about is gone.
Yeah.
He was great in Houston.
He had some
and
good
they're
years
on the
with
rise. He
Houston.
might get his ring.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this is a move not just for this year, but they've also positioned themselves to where if it doesn't work, they're still in pretty decent shape because they're still going to draft a receiver. My guess is in the first or second round. And Ridley's not as old as his age shows.
Right.
And they got him for the same
That's an
amount of
interesting
money he was
statement.
going
He's
to
not
make
as old
in
as his
Jacksonville.
age shows. I like that.
I mean,
Well, he's
No,
been-
I
he was out
understand.
of the league for 2
No,
years.
I
It's just like
understand,
you
but I
said.
just thought that's
Yeah.
an interesting, just the statement itself.
And so, so it's an interesting time. And I'm not even sure it'll work. Look, guys, all these signs, we don't know if they're going to work or not. That's not what we're saying. We're giving our opinion based on what we know. And we're saying if they're good moves at the time.
Yeah.
It's easy after the season to say, well, all these guys suck.
Right.
But it still doesn't take away from the fact that it was a good move for
It
them
could be a
and the
good
team.
move at the
It
time. It
doesn't
just-
mean it's going to work.
Right.
But it was
Right.
still a logical move for them to make.
Yeah.
And for Tennessee, this was the logical move for them to make.
I
Absolutely.
think I'm in agreement. I think it's a good move for Calvin Ridley. He had a pretty good thing going in Jacksonville, but let's be honest, Christian Kirk's as good when healthy.
Yeah.
He's coming here, and DeAndre Hopkins is still a good receiver. He's aging. Ridley's younger. I think it's a good move for him to start over. He's still got plenty left in the tank, and until we see that he doesn't, I'm going to say he's still a good receiver. He's got plenty left in the tank, and I think it's a great move for Tennessee for reasons y'all have already mentioned. It opens up the offense more. It gives them a second pretty good receiver, and I think it's great for Will Levis's professional development. Just like I said about Deontay Johnson with Bryce Young, this gives your young second-year quarterback, first time he's going to be a first-year starter this year, this gives him another proven, bona fide weapon to go with Hopkins and a guy that doesn't get talked about a lot, but Chigozio Okonkwo.
Well, I think we'll see
You got all three
more
of
from
those.
him too.
And I think they
And don't
probably
forget
should.
Spears and Pollard. So
Yeah,
they're putting
you're
themselves
building weapons around Will Levis to, like you said, if he's not our franchise quarterback, we're gonna find out because we're putting him in every position to prove that he is. So I think the Calvin Ridley signing does exactly that. I think it was a very good move for both of them. And Hopkins, at his age, probably will be moving on. If they can land Rome Odunze to play in a 3-receiver formation sometimes with those two guys, my goodness.
And that's assuming
That's-
Traylon Burks is never going to develop. I think they pretty
That-
much
yeah.
I think they've pretty much given up on him. But until he's not on the
they
roster,
drafted him, they
there's
knew-
always
yeah.
different regime though, different GM, different situation, different.
No, I
coaching
just
staff.
mean when they drafted
Yeah.
him, he was a guy that they drafted with the hope of this is our next
Right,
big receiver.
right.
Has not happened at all yet.
At all.
Could
At all.
could that change this year? We'll see. Not saying it will, but we'll see. All right, moving now to, speaking of aging receivers, Keenan Allen to the Chicago Bears. Talmadge, do you like this move for Chicago? Do you like the move for Keenan Allen?
I'm biased because I've always liked Keenan Allen. I've always thought he was underrated. So I'm going to say it's a great move for Chicago. I would say it's a great move for Keenan Allen for one reason. It was clear San Diego was ready to move on. I don't know San Diego, Los Angeles was ready
Yeah,
to move
I
on.
still call them the
They're
San Diego
still San
Chargers
Diego.
too. Yeah,
Los-
the Chargers.
Now, do I think his quarterback situation? I know people are saying Caleb Williams is going to be great, but I know what the quarterback in LA was.
We
I
already
that
know
for
Justin
sure.
Herbert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proven commodity.
Now, has it proven to work out for them as well as we would have thought? Not yet, but the talent is definitely there.
Yeah.
So, ordinarily, I would say bad move for Keenan because he doesn't have the proven quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But if the team is done with you,
Yeah.
What choice do you
then
have?
you don't have a choice.
Do you want to maybe be on their bench with a diminished role? Do you want to go
Right.
somewhere else?
Right. Fresh start. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a good move for him. Now we'll have to see how the quarterback is.
Yeah.
We don't know until that plays out. But again, we're just talking about what's logical at the time. It's a logical move for both parties. I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. I've always thought he was severely underrated. Great size, great route runner. Not really a speed guy, but he's faster than you think.
No, but he's
He's faster than
he's
you
effective.
think, and very productive. So, big fan of his. Hope it works out for them. And Chicago, obviously, again, they're doing the same thing that Tennessee's
Yes.
doing. We're going to get you as much weapons
We're
in
getting-
here, and we need to find out right. And I think teams are getting smarter with that now because before
Yeah.
it was draft the young quarterback and sit him and let him learn. Then it was no sense in sitting him. We got to draft him while he's on his rookie contract,
Yeah.
so we can get other players around him. Because by the time he makes big money, we can't go get other players.
Then who do
so
we
now
have
you're
for him?
rushing the younger quarterbacks in there.
Yeah.
So you don't like Young and Charlotte.
Bryce
We talked
Young,
about
yeah.
already. We don't know if he's good or not. Everybody says he's horrible, but how do we know?
Yeah.
They thought enough of him to take him number one, and a year
They
later
traded
he's
some
horrible.
pretty big
Come
draft
on.
picks for him to
So
get him. Yeah.
Chicago's doing the same thing. I'm gonna get as much player. We're gonna find out right now.
Right. If Caleb Williams is our future, he's gonna have a chance to show that.
We've got no choice but to play you because of the way the salary
Right.
cap works. But
But we're
we've
surrounding
got to
you.
put people around you right now. We can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
If that means we got to go get a free agent, because you can't wait on the draft. Now you've got to get players however you can get them because
Yeah.
of the situation we're talking about. And I give credit to Chicago for doing that.
Yeah.
I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. So far so good. We'll see.
Right. All right, Chris Black.
So
What are your thoughts?
look, I agree with you. I love Keenan Allen. He's just one of those guys that just, you look up and he's got a whole bunch of yards.
Yeah.
He's got catches. He has a ton of catches. The guy's a possession receiver. He gets it, and he's got hands that are great. Now, the thing that I'm kind of concerned about, he's 32.
He's
32.
He's entering his 12th season.
And he does get hurt.
And he gets hurt.
He ended last season on injured reserve.
So the question is, when does that happen? I hope it never does. I hope he goes into Chicago, and I hope Caleb Williams comes in and really shows. Obviously, you're not going to look at a guy. I mean, obviously, C.J. Stroud did great last year, and that was actually great to see. You'd love to see something out of Caleb Williams like that, but you just, that's always roommate. You just never know what's going to happen, right? But I'm excited to see what Keenan Allen's going to do for Chicago. I think it's a great move by Chicago to do that, to bring him in. You get somebody to go on the opposite side from DJ Moore, and now frees up DJ Moore to do all the. Now he's going to stretch the field. Now he's going to be the one going downfield, and he is going to be not getting the double teams with the safeties over the top, because you got to now worry about Keenan Allen across the middle or getting the short routes and breaking one.
Yeah. And with his age, I think you kind of hit on what we were talking about. Look, for Chicago, this only has to work for a year or two. Their main reason for bringing Allen is to see if their quarterback can play.
Yeah.
That if they can find that in a year or two, I'm not saying that you don't want Keenan Allen to be successful after that, but he did what you brought him in to do.
Absolutely.
I found out my quarterback can play. Now I'll go get another receiver, because you're right. You are old. You are slower. You do get hurt. But
they're not signing him thinking he's going to be there for 2 years.
Right, exactly.
And they've already got the guy on the other side that's going to be
there.
Yeah. So, and that's why I say, with the Chargers, that's why they didn't want him.
Right.
They're like, okay, you've been here long enough.
Time to move on.
It's just time for you to move on. So I think it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
And it proves their quarterback can play, then he served his role.
I concur, and I think I was a little surprised because he was so good last year. I know he ended the season on injury. For a guy in his 11th year, he had 108 receptions, 1,243 yards, and 7 touchdowns last year. To a guy, to y'all's point, he's not the fastest guy. He's a darn good receiver. I don't mean that in a bad thing, but those are very good numbers for his age and for a guy that just doesn't blow past everyone. He's a little bit, not quite as good as the guy I'm about to name, but he kind of reminds me of Mike Evans. Just year after year, he puts up big numbers.
Puts up big numbers.
And it does, Mike Evans a little bit more to the extent, but Keenan Allen's kind of in that category. I think it's a good move for Chicago because, again, you're surrounding, and we keep saying Caleb Williams. By the time I upload this episode, we'll know if it's Caleb Williams or not.
It's probably him, but yes.
Everything points to that, but I don't care whatever rookie quarterback they draft, you're giving him opportunities to succeed. DJ Moore, in my opinion, is one of the best receivers in the league. I don't want to go off too much on a tangent talking about where we rank him because, again, another story for another day. He's up there amongst the elite, in my opinion, right now. You bring Keenan Allen over. Keenan Allen, his numbers may not be ever again what they were last year, but he kind of needs to be okay with that because you're opening up the field for your rookie quarterback. You're playing off of DJ Moore. DJ Moore, okay, he's the bona fide star, but did I serve my purpose by helping this team? I think Keenan Allen's at the stage of his career where, whether it's easy or not, to accept the fact that I'm going to do what I do and be my best. And if my presence on the field helps this rookie quarterback develop, if it helps this star receiver on the other side of the field,
that's the bottom line.
if we win games, I think he has to be happy with that. All right. Last receiver I want to talk about is Marquise Brown, going from the Arizona Cardinals to the Kansas City Chiefs. How do you feel about it, Mr. Chiefs fan on the panel, Chris Black?
Well, I love it. Honestly, I love it.
So unlike the fact you didn't care about Kirk Cousins, you love this move.
Complete opposite.
Yeah,
complete opposite. Complete opposite. No, I really like Marquise. That signing. That's a good signing because he's got speed. He's going to be able to open up the field. Kansas City hasn't had anybody since they went ahead and traded away Hill and made that big move and shocked the ever-living snot out of everybody and every fan. Like, how can you get rid of the guy? But they ended up getting a ton of draft picks, which developed into that defense that they had last year that was like in the top.
That defense it pretty much helped carry them most of the year.
Oh, it carried them all year because the offense was so bad, and that's why Brown coming in is a big deal. Now, Rashee Rice emerged. I actually, watching all the game, I watched every game they played last year, and I liked what I saw. You could see it at the beginning when he was getting the touchdowns, and Mahomes was comfortable with him. And I also heard something during training camp was that Rashee Rice, and not to get off on a tangent from Brown, but Rice was the first rookie to ever pick up a Coach Reed offense as quickly.
I've heard that
no
also.
one,
Yeah.
no one has
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
picked
yeah.
it up as quickly as
Yeah.
he did. But the thing that's going to be nice is, the number one option is going to be Travis Kelce every freaking time. He's always looking for him. But the nice thing is now you have Marquise Brown that's going to be able to stretch the field, and you've got depending on how the situation with Rice now that has occurred.
We're going to call it a situation.
We're
for
going to
now.
call it a situation.
The
Yes,
right
absolutely.
situation.
We don't know how that's going to shake out.
We really
Is he going to
don't.
be available this season? I don't know. So, if he's available, look out. That offense is going to start picking up because Rice, toward the end of the year, he was their man. He was their number one. And he's already proven that with his speed, he can catch a receiver's screen and take that 8, 9, 10, 12 yards
Well,
easily.
he didn't just emerge as their top receiver. He was amongst the better receivers in the league
Second
for
half
those
of the year,
second half. Yeah.
In the second half,
In
he
the
did,
second,
yes,
if you
yes.
just look at his sample size from the second half, his numbers were up there.
But I'm only talking about Kansas City right now, okay?
I'm talking about
right.
Rashee Rice.
I know,
for Kansas City.
I know what I'm saying just from a team perspective.
Oh,
I think
okay,
it was a
okay,
great
okay.
move. For one, it's good for Brown. I think it was only a 1 year deal, if I remember correctly.
I
right?
believe
That I don't
you're
know.
right.
That'd be
think
my
it was
guess.
I'm
just a
pretty
1
sure
year.
it
I think it was a
is.
1 year prove it. We've
Yeah.
had quite a few of these guys are 1 year. Let's prove it.
That's kind of been a recurring.
And it's
yeah.
always good for the team to do that because they can cut their loss if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
It's good for the player too, because if he puts up big numbers,
It
all
puts
of a
up
sudden,
the
It
next
gives
big
him some
contract's
it gives him a negotiating
Yeah.
piece. Yeah.
So I look, I could go on for the next 30 minutes about this.
Oh,
wanna
I
know
have
what you
no
to
doubt.
say.
I think it's a perfect fit. It's the right team. It's the right coach. It's the right quarterback. Am I a big Brown fan based on what he's done in the league so far? No. Has he lived up to his potential? No.
No.
But again, if you're a receiver with some talent, with some speed, and you're trying to build a career, where else would you go but Kansas
Why
City?
wouldn't you want to play with
So,
Patrick Mahomes?
Right. Absolutely.
That makes it a good move for both. I hope he lives up to his potential because he was a first-round pick, was he not?
I believe.
I think he was coming out of
And he
Oklahoma.
ain't played like no first-round
No, he
pick.
hadn't.
No,
No.
he's had some injuries, but even when he's healthy, he hadn't played to the first round pick level.
So this is the chance for him to, like I said, rejuvenate, revitalize, however
Yeah.
you want to word his career, and it fills a specific need for a world
very
championship
specific
team.
need, yeah.
So all of a sudden, yeah, I think it's a good move for both. In fact, had we not signed in Tennessee, Calvin Ridley, Brown was one of my secondary options that I would have looked at. Again, he's not as good a receiver, but for where you would have gotten him, for how much you would have had to pay
Yeah.
for him, and the pure
And you could have
speed that he
gotten a
brings
one-year
and
deal.
potential and the 1 year deal,
Yeah.
he would have been somebody I would have considered.
And
So
he does
obviously-
have a lot of speed. So,
yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
there's-
it's more
yeah.
than a lot. He's a
Yeah.
burner for sure.
He's a
Yeah.
burner.
He's a burner for sure. So no, good move for both. I hope it works out for both. And again, I bring up the quarterback, but the coach too. What offense would you rather go? If he's got talent,
Yeah.
he's gone to the coach that
Mahomes
can
and
find that
Andy
talent,
Reid,
Period.
yeah.
And that's just a great combination between
It
a
really
coach
is.
and a quarterback. And you have a quarterback that's he's not selfish at all. I mean, he takes the blame when he wants it. When the blame is there, he takes it. He doesn't shovel it off to his receivers. Last year when
You don't hear
they
it.
had a
You
problem,
don't-
he was the leader.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Leader, period.
And
He's a good
I think
leader.
Brown is going to benefit from having a quarterback that is just, dude, the guy's a baller.
Well, and sorry,
it's gonna-
I don't want to cut you off if
no,
you got
all I
more
was
to
going to
say.
say was I'm curious to see how they use him because he's not really known as a route runner. But in that offense, I think they can find some routes that he runs well
Yeah.
and just
And capitalize
use those,
on that.
and they'll find a way to make it work consistently.
Well, you just look at Reed, and he knows how to get the best
That's what
out
I'm
of his
saying.
players.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what
I
I'm
think you
looking
hit on
forward
that.
to. Yeah.
If anybody will do that for Marquise Brown, he's in a
Yeah.
place. I think it's a great, not to be confused with decent move for both parties. Kansas City badly needed another receiver. We talked about Rashee Rice. I'm not going to exhaust into that.
Yeah.
He's an emerging, very good talent. But that was it. Kelsey's good, but he's getting older. Okay, they needed somebody else. Marquise, coming off of injury, Arizona's talking about drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., or they could get somebody else. We'll find out.
Or trade the pick.
Or trade the
Trade the
pick. This is a great move from Marquise to rejuvenate his career, possibly finally show the world that he's worth that first-round pick that he was spent on him years ago. It gives Mahomes another weapon. Mahomes spreads the ball out as well as any quarterback. If you're good and you get open, the ball will come to you. They're defending champions, and now, dare I say, they may have just gotten better. Not that Marquise is the game changer.
No, but they filled the need.
Yeah, they
Anytime you
filled a
fill the
need,
need,
yeah.
you're getting better.
We're not talking about them getting Justin Jefferson or
Right.
CeeDee Lamb, but they filled a need, and they were already really good.
I'll take either one of those.
Yeah, I think you probably
The
would.
whole world.
I'm
Yeah,
just
the whole,
saying.
as I say, and
I'm just
and
saying,
who
we would
wouldn't?
take those, but
yeah,
yes.
Marquise, from an athleticism standpoint, from a potential talent standpoint, he's got plenty of that. He hasn't quite shown it yet, and he just needs to live
We'll
up
see.
to it. And where he is now, if he's good enough with this one-year deal, I would not blame them and not be surprised if they sign him longer and we see a few years
they'll
of
see.
him and Mahomes playing well together. We're going to now shift to the running backs. We're going to start off with Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to say something y'all might not expect, but we're going to keep the camera rolling. I've had water and Dr. Pepper. I need to visit the lavatory. Keep the camera rolling, discuss Saquon. I'll come back and give my thoughts.
Okay. Well, Saquon to Philly. How you feel about it?
I'm torn on this. If I'm Philly, I make that deal.
Absolutely.
So they did the right thing. It's not the wrong move to make. Saquon, he's polarizing to me because you see the talent. He hadn't been on a team that's won a lot of games except for last year or year before, actually, now that they did make the playoffs. He's been hurt some. I don't know how much he moves the needle on a Giant team. So I guess what I'm saying is on a Philadelphia team, we're really going to see how good he is because they've got the two receivers on the outside. They need a third and fourth receiver. That's still a weakness for them because if one of their receivers gets hurt, they haven't really had anything else to go to.
Right.
But assuming those two receivers can stay healthy, assuming the quarterback bounces back and has a little bit better year than he had last year, I think this might be the first time we actually see Barkley live up to his potential. I'm not even sure his numbers will be as good as they've been in New York,
Yeah.
but I think he'll be a better player and a better fit for a team that's got pieces around him.
Yeah.
Because now he's not somebody that you can just afford to shift your whole defense to play against because you've still got that speed on the outside. You still got the quarterback that can throw it and run it. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's a better fit for Saquon, and I think we'll see how good he really is, even though his numbers may not reach that gaudy status.
Right.
I just think he's going to be more of a winning player with this team.
You know, like you said, I think the words that you really were stating there was there's going to be a question mark in the sense that, one, is he going to stay healthy?
Mm-hmm.
Two, how is it all going to work out? With Saquon, I'm scared of his health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can he stay healthy? But he's never had anything in to what you just said. The outside receivers and stuff, or he's just going to be a very nice complement. He catches the ball well out of the backfield. He runs the ball up the middle very well. And the thing is those now you have to, as defense, you're going to have to really pay attention to all of the weapons now, and not just key in on the running back, because that's unfortunately for New York, that's all
That's
they
what
really
they
had.
did.
He had to be the man because they really didn't have anything else, and so I think he's going to have a bit of a rejuvenation as long as he stays healthy. And again, that's the big question mark with him: can he stay healthy? And I think, is he going to have big numbers and rush for 1,500 yards? I don't think so. Not in that offense. I think they're going to. They're going to pass the ball around, but I think he's going to be a great complement to those receivers and allow them to be more open, because now they're going to have to worry about a running back because Miles Sanders didn't do it.
Yeah.
Swift didn't do it. So I think they automatically upgraded their back filled.
Oh, easily.
Easily there,
Easily.
and I think it's just gonna. It's a
I
good move
just
for
want to
Philly.
know where
It's just a question
Philadelphia.
mark.
Well, I just want to know where Philadelphia gets all this money. It seems like any player they want, they get. No, seriously.
I mean, no, but
It's
you're
a-
not
it's a
wrong.
legit question.
Anytime they get
You're
a
not
player, they
wrong.
get the player they want.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are they under the same salary cap
As everybody else is.
Well, they lost on the defensive side. I mean, they lost Fletcher Cox. You know, he retired, so there's money there.
And they
that's
traded
gone.
the pass rusher.
And they traded a pass rusher to the Jets.
Hassan.
Hassan.
What's his
Dang
name?
it, you.
Hassan.
Hassan.
Okay.
Well, they traded Hassan to the Jets, and
Yeah.
they picked up a defensive player from the Jets that was much younger.
Younger. And actually a pretty good player.
And a pretty good player
Actually a
itself.
pretty good player.
So they're saving money there. So they're pretty shrewd
That's
there. From
part
the-
of it, but still,
Yeah.
it's a little hard to know how they're juggling everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
But yeah, to your point,
But to
that's
you-
part of the answer.
Yeah, there's
They find a way to make it work. So if I'm a Philly fan, I'm thankful for that because they go for it. People can say they didn't make it, they didn't win it. I just want a team that goes for it every year,
And they
puts
do.
themselves in a
And they do,
position
they
to
do.
win every
Yeah.
year.
And they have
if you being a Kansas City fan, you know that. But even before Mahomes, they were going to make the playoffs every year. Mahomes put them over the top.
Yeah.
Mahomes
Oh, yeah.
made them special. But you have a team
He
that's
took
set
them
up
to
to
another
compete
level, but still.
every single
Yeah.
year, and Philadelphia is building that. And this is another
That's
step
just,
in that
just another
direction.
piece
Yeah.
in the machinery.
It absolutely is. Now, I think it's a great move for Saquon Barkley. It's a chance to rejuvenate his career because, let's face it, he was the Giants' offense last year.
And the year before that.
And the year before that, he was in a terrible system. He's in a terrible situation. It was way too easy for defenses to just load the box with 8,
Absolutely.
even 9 defenders and just dare Saquon to somehow beat him. His yards per carry reflected that. Still had 962 yards and then caught 41 passes as well. He's a very good running back. Sometimes we lost sight of that last year if you weren't a hardcore fan because you just looked at how terrible the Giants were. And in some games, he didn't hardly do anything. But if you really looked at it, it's kind of like Breece Hall with the Jets for most of the year last year. Their quarterback play was so terrible, Breece couldn't get open.
If you
to
watch
show.
tape on him, he's lost nothing.
Saquon? Oh, yeah.
And
No,
that's what
I
people
concur.
need to realize. A lot of fans don't have access to tape, or you can actually find it online and they don't look. They just go by what the media says or what they
Right.
Go
hear,
by what they're
or the
told,
record or
yeah.
what they think. But when you look at him on film, he's the same player he's always been, and that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
He hasn't lost anything. Yes, he's had some injuries, so that would be kind of my concern. But he's now in a system where he has a really good quarterback.
Yep.
Philadelphia has one of the best tandems of receivers in the entire league with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. They got a pretty good defense, a far superior offensive line. Saquon hit the lottery with going to a team where he's surrounded by this. Some people like, but Jalen Hurts is going to vulture some touchdowns. You know what?
So what?
Who cares?
who cares?
Saquon's going to put up his
what?
numbers. He's going to get some 20-yard touchdown runs where Jalen Hurts don't have a chance to plunge it for the 1-yard line. Who cares?
I
I'm
can't
like,
double team AJ. I can't put my best corner on Devontae if I'm going to double team AJ.
Right.
You
I
got-
can't put a spy on the quarterback.
You got Dallas
and worry
Goedert.
about.
And we
Don't forget
Yeah,
Goddard
I mean,
is
yeah,
there.
Dallas Goddard's a pretty darn good tight
So-
end.
So,
So,
they're just loading up the weapons.
They're
They're
loading
making
up
that
the
run
weapons.
for the Super Bowl. It's what they're trying to do.
and I'll disagree with you a little bit. I think DeAndre Swift was a pretty good running back. I think he was pretty good last year. They upgraded with Saquon Barkley.
That's what. Well, when I
Yeah.
said that when I said my stuff about
Yeah,
Miles
he
and
didn't
Swift,
get it done.
it's just that this was an upgrade.
Oh yeah,
This was an upgrade.
100%. Anybody that would debate that, let me just say,
Yeah, Swift is a player you react to as the game goes, depending on how well he's doing.
Saquon,
you're planning for him
game
before the
planning
game starts.
before
And there's the
100%, and that's the
Absolutely.
difference. So yeah, I think it's a really good move for both sides.
Yep.
All right, now let's shift to the aforementioned DeAndre Swift going to the Chicago Bears. Chris Black, how do you feel about it? Good move for DeAndre Swift. Good move for the Bears.
Well, it gives them say who's their running back. I'm
They had a 3-man rotation last year with Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, and Deonta Foreman.
so yeah. Herbert is the one that I think was the starter, I believe.
At the beginning of the season, he was, and then injuries kind of dictated that.
I like Swift going there. Now that's going to give Caleb. We keep saying Caleb Williams, but I mean it's
Presumably,
pretty much
yeah.
a foregone conclusion. that he's going to go there. So it gives another weapon.
Yes.
It's somebody else that the defense has got a game plan for, and so I think it's good for the Bears to get him because it just helps in that backfield. I like Swift. I don't have a problem with him at all.
Yeah.
So I just think it's going to be good. It's going to be, look, a lot of people look and say, okay, well, is this guy going to get 1,000 yards? He's going to get 1,500 yards. Look, I look at it as you got to be a cog in the machinery. And for the Chicago Bears, I think it's a good cog in the machinery.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what are they trying to do? They're trying to be competitive. Their division, and you said it earlier when we talked
about Cousins going
about
to Falcons.
and we're talking about the division.
It's gotten better.
It's gotten better,
Way better.
and they've got to get better.
That's the thing. The Bears have not gotten better
And
as
haven't.
the defense has got, as the division has gotten better. They haven't grown with that.
Right. So they've got to have another cog in the machinery
Yeah.
that can get moving. And Caleb Williams coming in, Swift coming in, Keenan Allen now is coming in. I think it's gonna.
They also got Gerald Everett from the Chargers.
Yeah,
They already
there you
had
go.
Cole Kmet.
Yeah.
Now they got Gerald Everett too.
So
Yeah, I agree, and there's not much I can add to that. Swift in another situation, I'm not gonna say he's just a guy because he's better than that, but there's times when he looks like just a guy. But with Chicago, because of all of the other weapons, he just fits in nicely. That's
Yes.
the best way
It's a nice
that we
compliment.
can kind of put it.
Yeah.
There might be a game where he gets 80 to 120 yards, and it wouldn't shock you.
Oh, he
Next
will.
game, he
So-
might get 5 touches and 12 yards, but they won the game. I mean, he's going to do what he needs to do to help them win. They've got enough pieces now to where they can kind of spread it around. He's going to play his part. So he's
Yeah.
the perfect running back for that role.
Yep, absolutely.
And I don't disagree with any of that. The only thing I will say is it a good move for the Bears? Yes, because you brought over 1,000-yard rusher from the previous season, a guy that proved he could be the lead back on a much better team than the one you have. So yes, it's a good move for them. Not to get too far off topic, but Deontay Foreman went to the Browns already. If I'm Chicago, I'm looking to trade Khalil Herbert and see what else I can bring over. Because now I've got DeAndre Swift and a pretty good second-year running back in Roschon Johnson. I've already got a pretty good rotation. Khalil Herbert still has some trade value.
Does he? I'm asking.
I think he does right now more than he's going to.
I'll buy that.
This is the most he has now.
I'll buy that. And what do you think value is?
Well, I think they could get. That's maybe a topic for another time. They're not going to get a huge amount back
Yeah.
for him. I concur, but here's my point.
And not because of him necessarily, it's also because of the position.
The injuries
no one's
in the
gonna give up.
position.
Yeah, no one's going to give up draft
And I
capital
concur with
for a
that.
running back.
But because
No.
you've got Swift and Johnson, if I can get something tangible,
I'm thinking a conditional fifth is probably as high as you can get, and that's pushing it.
okay.
That's pushing it.
But even that,
that's something.
I'd still rather have that because you might still get a pretty good player out of that. And nothing against Khalil Herbert. I just think now that you've got
Yeah,
that
they
much of a
don't-
running
there's
back
no
room,
need.
you just don't need him. Roschon's going to develop. DeAndre Swift's going to be your lead back for this year. That's my thought, and
Makes
that's
sense.
not the episode's not about Khalil Herbert, but just my thoughts there. Do I think it's a better move for DeAndre Swift? I don't really know because he was already the lead back on a pretty darn good team with a pretty darn good offense. I don't know if going to Chicago is necessarily better for him. I like it for the Bears. We talked about they're bringing these pieces in for presumably Caleb Williams. Is it really better for DeAndre Swift? Not really sure. I don't think it's a bad move for him. I
That's a
think he
tough one.
fits well there. Do I think it's better than him staying with an established better team with a great wide receiver tandem and an
Now,
established
he was
great
free agent,
quarterback?
right? He wasn't traded. He was a free agent.
He was a
I think
he was a free agent.
Okay.
He was a free agent.
Here's what I'd say to that. I'd have to know what he thought he was going to get, what his agent told him he was going to get, compared to what he got.
Okay,
If he got
yeah.
what he wanted, it's a good move for him, bottom
Right,
line.
yeah.
That, on that aspect, I will concur.
But I get what you mean as far
Yeah,
as being competitive and all
career-wise
that.
and-
But
yeah.
ultimately, when it comes to free agency, it comes down to did they get what they wanted, especially running
True
backs because the
enough.
market is so limited. Although it's higher than we thought it would
The
be.
shelf life in the market are
It-
somewhat
it-
limited
it-
for running
it-
backs.
But the market was a lot higher than we thought. But still, their running backs
Yeah.
is not going to be $20 million a year. It's-
And I forget the deal he got, but it was one that I kind of raised my eyebrows. I was like, "Oh, he got a pretty
well, that's
good
what I'm saying.
deal."
All the running
so-
backs got more than we thought.
Yeah, yeah.
All of them.
All right, so sticking with running backs, and this is our last category. We got several more guys, but we're not analyzing every position. Not much defense. Not that it's not important. I just didn't want to have a 14-hour episode, 14 or 6. So sticking with running backs, Josh Jacobs to the Green Bay Packers. Talmadge, how do you feel about this move?
To the Green Bay Packers, it shocked me, number one.
Yeah.
I did not expect it. I'm not sure how to take this one. Talent-wise, it's obviously an upgrade. And Green Bay, in their own way, is going for it. They'll never outwardly go for it, because they're not in that market and they don't have that money to pay those bonuses. No. People always talk about the salary cap. That's one thing. But people forget, to pay the bonuses, you pay that immediately. So no matter what the cap is,
Right.
if your market can't
That's
generate
a
a lot of
separate
money,
category.
you can't pay these bonuses out like that. So for them, this is as close to going forward as they're going to get. He's obviously an upgraded player. I'm just not sure how much more that moves the needle, especially in this league. You already had a running back that in big games played well. You had a tandem that was comparable to a lead back. So I'm not, name-wise, yes, it makes it better because he's a better player. But production-wise, I'm not sure I spend that money to get that. If I'm Green Bay and I'm deciding to spend money, I'm probably going to a more premium position to do it, not running back. So that one kind of surprised me. I'll say a good move for Jacobs because obviously the Raiders weren't wanting him anymore.
Yes.
And he signed with them thinking, I'm going to a good team. He got, like we just talked about, the running back market paid a little more than we thought it would. So he got his money. For the Packers, I'm not saying it's a bad move. I'm just saying I'm not quite sure I understand it.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Chris Black?
Well, let me ask you guys this: is Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones pretty much the same guy?
I'd say Jacobs is better, but yeah, kind of to my point, I'm not sure how much.
I think you touched on that.
I think they're pretty much the same
I'm
guy.
not sure
so
Jacobs moves the needle any more than Aaron Jones does.
Yeah,
I'll say this quickly on that topic. I think Josh Jacobs, when healthy, is noticeably better. But to your point, does that change their overall team dynamic too much? Right. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no. So it's just, I think, obviously they Green Bay lost Aaron Jones. He went to Minnesota, and
but they lost him because
left
they signed
after
Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs came.
Well. But
so they could have kept Aaron Jones. He left after they signed.
Yeah, but they're not going to keep both of them.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But that's why they lost Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones left because
sorry,
they
I was
signed
thinking he
him.
left earlier.
No. They signed Jacobs in like the next day.
Yeah.
I like Jacobs coming because Jacobs always seemed to, with me being an AFC West fan, and we're knowing him, and I've lost some sleep watching him play, and so him going to Green Bay, yeah, it's I'm glad because he's out of my division, but. I think, and again, I look at things a little different than people do because I look at the team as a whole. You've got to have that line. You've got to have the D line, the O line. For these guys to actually move the needle on a team, they got to have a line. So, I look at the overall. Is he a cog in the wheel? Yes. Is Jordan Love going to be a quarterback on the rise? I think he's a quarterback on the rise. He's not going to.
I think he is.
He may not be a C.J. Stroud, but he sat back behind Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers. I was say Jones. So we're talking.
I got you.
That's all I do.
Yeah.
But he sat
and
behind.
By the way, I'm not sure Love won't be as good as C. I mean, he's pretty.
You're not sure what?
Love won't be as good as C.J.
He might be.
He's not right now, but to your point.
But we've only seen one season.
Yeah.
Of it. But he also took the team to the playoffs too. So
in his first year as a starter last year, he proved enough.
So especially the second half. But then we're getting off topic.
Yeah, we're getting off topic.
But yes,
I like him to go to Green Bay, and I think it's a good move for Green Bay to have a nice running back, a nice compliment to Love, and like I said, it's a nice. And I've said it before, and it may be boring to say, but it's another cog in the machine.
But it's like you said in the beginning, though. You just said you're not sure there's a difference between him and what he already has.
Right. So but he's a little bit better. He's a little bit better.
I think he's quite a bit better. But
how much does it change? Does he change the trajectory of their team all that much?
Yeah. Not.
We'll have to see.
Not much, but a little bit.
The fact that we're all three going, I don't know.
But I think it also goes back to what you said, and you make a very valid point. Financially, you can't. The bonuses, that's what draws the guys in, is yes, I get 3 years, $51 million, But when you say, well, yeah, your upfront bonuses, here's this, and all the other $30 million, for them, they're small market. It makes it very difficult. So it's kind of shocking that they got
did it. Yeah, because it's like
he went from Las Vegas.
If I'm going to decide, if I don't have a lot of money because of my market, and I'm going to the free agent market, I'm going to go after free agents that are higher premium. I'm going for the edge rusher, the receiver, the quarterback, because I know I'm not going to have too many chances to do it. Running back to spend that money? Okay.
Yeah.
Again, not saying it's wrong because he's a great one, very good to great player.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know why they did it. Now, maybe they have a plan we don't have. Maybe they know something we don't know. And Jacobs is a heck of a player. So they can't really lose. I'm just saying, I don't know if that
it's
resource
just kind of
is where
curious.
I would have gone.
I think for all of us, and this is one thing I would say, it was a curious move. Josh Jacobs last season had 805 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. He had some injuries. The year before, he had twice that amount rushing yards. Let's not forget, he led the league in rushing with 1,600 yards 2 seasons ago. That was his last full healthy season. That's why I think he's a big upgrade to Aaron Jones because both of them are injury prone, first of all. Jacobs, I think it's a great move for him because, like you said, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, man, these teams move around too much for me. The Raiders, John Madden, Oakland, okay, shoe program, they kind of were ready to move on from Josh Jacobs, okay? Whatever, I get it. I think it's a good move for him. I think it's an interesting move for Green Bay because, again, yes, you upgraded, but how much does it impact the team? Because Aaron Jones, and spoiler alert, he's next on the list, so we're about to talk about him. In big games, he can put up big numbers.
He's proven it.
He's proven it enough times, and they've got enough young receivers around him. Him and the lesser talented, but when you combine them, A.J. Dillon, that was a pretty decent backfield tandem. Does Josh Jacobs make up for both of them? Yeah, maybe, but does that change the team dynamics? I thought, I think there's other teams that would have, I could see him going to better. A team like the Texans before they made their offseason move, who needed a running back. After Saquon left the Giants, and who would want to go to the Giants, but they needed a running back. I could kind of see him going there more.
And they could have offered him the money.
They could have offered him more money. So there's teams like that where I'm like, I could have seen it make a little more sense for him to go to. But hey, maybe it'll be a great move. Maybe it'll work out. They're getting a great player, so it's not a bad move. It's just one. I'm like you. When I heard he wasn't on the Raiders, I'm like, well, of course, okay, I expected that. When I heard he went to the Packers, I was kind of like,
of all places,
really? Yeah. It was not something that I expected. So we'll see how it turns out. Well, let's just go ahead and shift to the guy he's taking over for. Aaron Jones to the Minnesota Vikings. Another guy that we talked about can be very productive but injury prone. Talmadge, what do you think about him going to the Vikings?
Well, considering how all this played out, and I'm not talking about just the move in Green Bay, but all the running backs that moved. And when I think his was unexpected, so it's not like he got to sit around and pick.
No, it happened fast. He needed a new
and
home.
All the other places that already filled up. So based on that, I feel like it was a good move for him, good move for the team, value pick too. I think there's value there. They didn't spend a ton of money. It's not a long-term deal. We'll see how it plays out.
Right.
He already knows the division, so he knows his competition.
Yep.
To me, it's one of the more perfect fits, and he's one of the more underrated players and very productive. And if he can stay healthy, I think he'll put up good numbers and have a chance to be really successful. My only fear is they're going to draft a quarterback or either roll with Darnold, so defenses are going to focus on, they've got the receivers, but they ain't got to really give them the ball.
If it's Sam Darnold, then that's it.
But for what makes sense, I think this is A+ stuff. I mean, I think it's a perfect match, really.
Okay.
Based on how things played out.
What are your thoughts, Chris?
I can't add a whole lot more to that, to be honest. I mean, you pretty much nailed that. I mean, it's Aaron Jones, what it provides is a good fit for them, right? I mean, like you said, the problem is Darnold, for them. Is he going to be able to get the ball? Because they're going to stack that box. If I'm the defensive coordinator, I'm stacking the box, and I'm just going to key on the run and make him throw the ball. because you know you're going to get the blitz on the
Or
quarterback.
I'm double
so,
teaming Justin Jefferson every play and daring somebody else to beat me. I
Well,
mean,
exactly. So I mean, Aaron Jones may be running up against 8 and 9 man fronts easily.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, it's a value pick, and so it fit for what their needs were at the time. So I definitely think I like that he went there. I just don't know. The biggest question is the quarterback. We're talking about Aaron Jones, but for him to be successful, you got to have a
talk about how
quarterback
it
that
fits with
keeps
the team.
him.
That's valid.
You got to have a quarterback that is going to make that defense honest. And I don't think that Darnold's it. So, but we're talking Aaron Jones. I like him going there.
Real quickly, I just thought something. The only team I could think of that'd be a better fit for him, believe it or not, would have been Dallas. Because they need a running back.
I was gonna say
He's ran the
that
ball
too.
well against them, so they know
They
he
know
can
what
play.
he can do. Yeah.
That would have made some sense to me, but beyond that, Minnesota's.
I'm just thankful that he didn't go there. So,
I will say I think it's a good move for Aaron Jones because again, suddenly he was out of a job. He was in a pretty good situation, but when that changed, you need to go somewhere. And Minnesota, this was a good fit because, and nothing against Alexander Mattison, he had some good games this year. I'm not trying to attack him as a person, but you already lost Kirk Cousins. You've got an elite receiver, a pretty darn good second-year receiver in Jordan Addison. You got to hope and pray Hawkinson comes back healthy because he was an elite level tight end when he was. You need something upgraded from Ty Chandler and Alexander Mattison. You either draft another complimentary running back to go with one of those guys, or you do what they did and you bring in a guy like Aaron Jones. And they had to be ecstatic that he was suddenly available because, again, they're in the division. They know how good he is. He last year had some injuries, so his numbers didn't just blow you away. 656 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. That doesn't sound like a very good player. We know that he is because we've seen what he does when he's healthy and how he rises up in big games. I think it's a very good fit for Minnesota, and I'll say this real quick, and in the interest of time, I'll move on after that. If they roll into the season with Sam Darnold as their quarterback, they're asking for a failure of a season.
Yep.
You already don't know about Hawkinson. You're going from Kirk Cousins to Joshua Dobbs to Nick Mullins to now Sam Darnold. If you want Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and now Aaron Jones to really be able to help your team compete, they gotta trade up for McCarthy, Drake
really
May,
have no
somebody.
choice, yeah.
If they don't, at the very least, somebody like Spencer Rattler or Bo Nix, somebody gives you some kind of potential. But yeah, trade up for McCarthy or Drake May, in my opinion, if you want to. You can't go
for
from
Rattler,
Kirk
they
Cousins.
can stay where they are. They
Yeah,
can,
true.
you
That
don't
was
trade
kind.
for
That
it.
wasn't the best example.
But I get what you
yeah,
mean.
you roll into it with Sam Darnold. You've basically cast in your chips.
And
for
if
this
the quarterback class was better next year, I might say that might be their plan because they're basically sacrificing this year.
Right.
But the quarterback class next year is not very good.
Right now you've got, and we've already exhaustively said Caleb Williams looks locked in, but you've got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, plus you've got guys like Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. You're not going to have that many elite level quarterbacks next season, probably. So yeah, they need to grab one of these guys now.
If Rattler, I know he has no eligibility, but if he did,
If
stay
he
one more
waited
year,
a year,
he would be a first round pick next year just because that's a position of need and they
Yes.
always overvalue them.
Yes.
And just because they need a quarterback, he'd be a first round pick.
Out of
That tells
necessity
you
for
how
some
bad that
teams.
class next year is going
Right.
to be. So yeah, so I don't believe they are sacrificing this year, which tells me
That would be
they're doing
very
everything they can
foolish.
to trade up.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they can do it because you got to keep in mind somebody has to want to do it with you.
somebody has to be
Yeah.
willing to
But-
sacrifice one of those
But
picks.
if they're not looking to do that, then they're setting their
Like I
franchise
said, they're
way
throwing
back.
their chips
And by
in.
the way, they're saying bye to Jefferson too because they're going to have to deal him to recover
Yes.
assets.
Yeah.
And he's not going to want to stay there
Exactly.
without Kirk Cousins or somebody of some.
It's funny how all these moves are tied together.
I know, and
Yeah.
that's one reason I wanted to do this episode. When I started thinking about it, I was like, every one of these moves affects another one, and that's one of the biggest reasons we're on this topic. All right, Tony Pollard to the Tennessee Titans. Chris Black, how do you feel about this move?
Well, I think it definitely helps Will Levis, right? I think it's a good move for the Titans to bring him in. You get a running back that is explosive coming out of the backfield. He's got good hands as well. I think he's going to be. It's a good move for the Titans. I know you like it.
I do.
Do we know that he likes it?
No,
Let's find out.
Well, he talked about it earlier.
Here's the thing I would say about this. I think it's more of a statement of where they're trying to go as a team than the actual talent itself. Not saying he's not talented, but this is a clear move in philosophy.
Yes.
Their new coach wants running backs that can run patterns out of the backfield, not just catch screens, leak outs, actually
Yes.
run patterns. Because you have Tajay Spears too. That's why this move surprised me a little bit, because you kind of already have a back that does the things that Pollard does. But what that tells you is two things. He wants a back at all times, all three downs, no matter who's in the game, that can do this specific thing.
Yeah.
That's what it tells you. Number two, it tells you don't be surprised if you put them on the field at the same time. Because Spears played with Henry last year.
He did.
So now if you have one in the backfield and you put one as a slot receiver, all of a sudden it opens things up for you, especially not knowing what Traylon Burks is going to turn into.
Right.
If you're going to get a top-level receiver in the draft, because you really need a tackle. But and I'm saying if you don't get the tackle, like I said, you'll go for the receiver. But if the tackle's there, you're not getting one of the top receivers. So he's telling you, I need a back on the field at all times.
And that's a smart move. I'm
At
preparing
all
for
times.
if I don't get a receiver.
And so that's what it shows. Secondarily, Pollard, people say he had a down year last year, which he did. But yards after tackle last year per average, he was second in the league. So he's still proving he can break a tackle and he can catch the ball back. So he has a running style of a power back in the open field of an elusive back.
He's got this speed and elusiveness.
So he does both. Same thing with Tajay Spears. Tajay Spears is little, but if you watch tape on him, he's not afraid to go up the middle. He breaks tackles. Yeah. So what he's basically saying is, I need this type of back on the field 100% of the time. And Pollard fits that mold. Like I said, at first I didn't get it because I'm like, you're kind of duplicating here. But if that's what the coach wants, you definitely got it.
Well, and I don't know if you remember this. The day of this signing, I texted you that day, and I was like, what do you think about this? Because everything you just said, we discussed on that day. Because I was like, okay, yes, he's a good player. Things weren't working in Dallas. My opinion, they didn't really capitalize on what he was capable of, and that's a discussion maybe for another time. Okay, he was coming off an injury for the previous season. Maybe it was time to move on. I did not expect him to go to Tennessee for the same reasons. I was like, they've basically already got a Tony Pollard that's in his second year that seems primed to take over with Derrick Henry moving on. It made no sense to me. But then after you and I got to talk more, we discussed pretty much everything you just said. I was like, okay. In the one sense, they kind of eat into each other's production and almost cancel out each other's potential. But for the team standpoint, I do think it's a good move because, again, you've now got a Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears that can be on the field at all times. And if they don't use them on the field together at times, I think they'd be foolish because you can split one out wide. You can put Pollard in the slot as your third receiver, have Spears in the backfield. Even on run plays, just to keep the defense honest. Why wouldn't they do that? And you give Levis another weapon who can run the ball. He's got explosiveness. He can run, like to your point, not just dump offs. He can do that, but he can run routes and catch passes. I think it's a very good move for the overall team development. And because of the fact that if Dallas wasn't going to utilize him properly, because my initial thought was, why wouldn't Dallas hold on to him and then draft a Braylon Allen or a Marshawn Lloyd or somebody that's a different style and use them in tandem? That way, I think Pollard would be much more effective, much more explosive. Little surprised at how that turned out, but it could turn into a very good situation for Pollard. Even if his numbers are down a little, I think it could still work out reasonably well.
And he's going home. He went to Memphis.
That's true. He played for Memphis in college. So, all right. Little different player here. Austin Eckler to the Washington Commanders. Talmadge, how do you feel about this?
I'm torn because I admit I've never watched him play a lot. And I know who he is. I know what his production. I know he's a versatile back. I get all that.
Yeah.
But I'm just honestly saying, haven't seen him play a ton over his career. Never looked at tape or film on him. So I've always kind of been like, he puts up decent numbers, but I ain't that impressed. But I'm admitting, I say that and then I'm admitting to you, I really can't say that because I haven't watched him play. if he's as good as people say and as good as production has shown over the years, and if he can stay healthy, Washington obviously needed something. Okay, it's a nice move for them. I don't have a ton to say about it. If he can live up to what he's done in the past, they got a good player. Washington, to me, right now is kind of the Siberia of football. You just don't know
Yeah.
where they're going, what they're going to have. You would suspect one of the quarterbacks. People are saying May. I think they should go with Daniels. That's just my thought. And with Kingsbury, there, I think they are going to go with Daniels because that seems to be a better fit.
that would not surprise me.
So we'll see, and they're going to have the young quarterback, so having a versatile running back never hurts. So it's a
Right.
good move for them. If he got his money, it's a good move for him.
Okay, how you feel about it, Chris?
Well, I mean, his injuries, he's getting hurt almost every year, and so
He
that's
missed
the one.
significant time last year.
It's just that's the thing that concerns me about it. But the fact that he can catch the ball out of the backfield really helps out. And tell me if I'm wrong, but and I know you will. Bieniemy is still the OC, right?
No, he's
No,
did he move
UCLA.
on?
I think he went to UCLA.
You're right.
He
That's
went-
what it is.
yeah, yeah.
I know that he liked him out of the back. He likes running backs come out of the backfield.
Yeah.
He's very inventive. So
Well, he was kind of that type of player himself, so he.
Yeah, I'd
wants-
forgotten he
likes
was
to
the
see
OC
that.
there now. But I think they had to have somebody. Just like you, they're the low team in the league. There's just that whole situation with their previous owner put them in the place where they're at, and they just can't seem to get out of their own way. And they let a bunch of defensive players go, and they sold a bunch of guys last year, traded a bunch
Yeah,
of
some
guys.
moves that didn't make a whole lot
It
of
makes
sense.
you kind of
really.
scratch your head. I think they had to have somebody, and so
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
just had to have a body, and the fact that he could run the ball and catch out of the back of the out of the backfield. I think it's a big plus for them.
And keep in mind too, people talk about the salary cap. There's also a minimum. You got to spend the money somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't just get to say we're
So-
giving bonuses to our coaching staff.
So-
Yeah.
We're getting a new team jet. I mean, you
Yeah.
got to use that money.
So yeah, I think he's just a guy at this point that they had to have somebody.
Yeah, at this stage of his career, he's just not as valuable as he was. We talked about trade value earlier. If this was a year ago, it's a bigger move. He's getting older. He had an injury last year that he missed several games. And I'm going to be honest, when he came back, he just didn't look very good. He
I do
didn't look
remember
like
that.
the same player.
Yeah.
He was very disappointing when he came back
You
from
can
his
see
injury.
why the Chargers.
You can
moved
see
on.
why they're ready to move on. So I'm not. Do I think it's a good situation for him or the Commanders? I'm gonna be 100% honest. I don't know. I think it was time for him to move on. This is a guy that had over 900 yards receiving a few years ago, plus like 700 or 800 rushing in the same year. He's not quite Christian McCaffrey, but he's a similar style of player.
Do
He's
you
a poor man's version.
Do you think he'd be better now in the position of he's strictly a third down back?
That might be what ends up happening because Brian Robinson Jr. is already a pretty good running back. The Commanders have plenty of issues, don't get me wrong. On both sides of the ball, you could really say, and organizationally. I don't know that he's a better running back than Brian Robinson Jr.
may
at this
not
stage
be.
of their
No, he
careers.
may not
So
be.
I
I
don't
think
think he
Eckler's going to get every chance to prove he's a three-down back.
paying
I
him
don't-
like he is.
They're paying him like he's a three-down back. So I think he'll get every opportunity to prove it. I don't know that he's going to hold off Brian Robinson. If anything, we might see a 50-50 split. And then why'd you pay that money when Brian Robinson could have just been your workhorse? Or you keep Brian Robinson and maybe draft like a Bucky Irving or somebody and have those guys in tandem. Austin Eckler's at
Look at
the
your
age
draft
with the
knowledge.
injury.
Just throwing out these college players left and right. Right?
Somebody hadn't done anything over the last week.
But yeah, I don't know how much I like this move, and I think there's other teams that might have made a little more sense to go to for him, but we'll see. He's still got something left in the tank, but
we got to
he's
figure out
not.
what it is.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what this is showing, and I know we're almost done. We're not quite there yet, but the running back position this year in free agency was the most interesting of all the positions.
Oh,
for
that's
me.
why I saved it for our last category.
Because it's like so many names moved, some of them to take on different roles, Some of them are expected to take on the same roles just for a different team. Some of them we're not clear about. Some of it just feels like they just flip-flop spots. I mean, it's I've never seen it, and I didn't expect this.
No, there's been
But-
more interesting movement than I thought.
And the money paid out was a lot more than I thought for running
That
backs.
too. Especially when the games change so much for the passing. We've talked
Right.
about this over the past several years. The passing, it's so much more of a pass-heavy league now. You don't expect running
You
backs
just
to be
don't
getting
see
this type
it,
of
but
payday.
yeah,
so.
this was really interesting stuff.
So we got a couple of other big name running backs to go over. Joe Mixon to the Houston Texans.
Oh, you skipped over the
Oh, I just
you gonna
realized
leave
he's a
him?
bigger name, so I'm gonna backtrack.
You're gonna backtrack.
Yeah,
okay.
we're gonna save him.
It's
I
your
thought he was
channel,
gonna-
man. It's your channel. Don't let him take it from you.
He just like, wait, Jared, did you miss something?
Like, come on, hello, the one I've been waiting to talk about.
How'd you
Well,
jump over
he didn't
him?
see it, but he tapped me on the shoulder and whispered to me, "I don't think Jared can read." But
Y'all are still trying to figure out whether I can or not. Somebody else might have typed this all up for me, and then I just somehow committed it.
I've sat here
memory.
watching you changing your, I didn't
Right,
spell
right.
that right. Didn't
Well,
spell
let me
that
fix
right.
this up
he
here.
memorized the whole first 2 pages.
That wouldn't be as shocking as can you read or not. All right, but Joe Mixon to the Texans. Talmadge, how do you feel about this? Good move for Mixon.
This was interesting too, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Mixon's a pretty versatile back. He still got some juice. They
Mm-hmm.
needed a back, so that made sense for some reason. And I don't have a reason for it, but for some reason, I just didn't see him going there, and I can't really figure out why. But ultimately, I think it'll be a pretty good move for them. I was happy with the backs they had last year that split time. Now they all moved on, so I guess I can't remember which move came first.
Well, Devin Singletary, I think, moved on after Joe Mixon came.
See, and
so
that being said,
I think that's the case.
if that's true, I'm not sure I wouldn't have stuck with Singletary. He actually had a decent year and some big games for them. Now he wasn't consistent, but he had
Nobody
some
had
big
some.
games
Yeah,
for
you
them.
saw enough.
And
to
you
know.
saw enough to be like, okay, this guy, like we just talked about, the running back thing was just so odd this year.
Carousel.
I
of
can't
events,
say
yeah.
Mixon was a bad move because he's a good player, but I think he's a bit past his prime. And you already had Singletary. How much better does Mixon make you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we'll see. And not to get too far off, but the combination of Mixon and Stephon Diggs, does that elevate them a lot? We'll see. I'm not saying it does. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not knocking the Texans because I think they obviously surprised themselves and the rest of the world last year.
They did.
And they're like 10 years ahead of where they thought they
Right.
would be.
So why
maybe
not?
they're thinking, okay, let's
Keep the foot on
accelerate
the
the process
accelerator,
and let's
yeah.
it go. So I'm not knocking them at all.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that makes them better.
And do you think it's a good move for Mixon, going from what he was situation he's in with the Bengals to now the situation he'll be in with the Texans?
Did he have a choice? I can't remember.
I'm
not sure he had a choice.
They traded him, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he had a choice. So
Well, yeah, true. I don't mean that was his, but do you think it's a better situation, whether he chose it or not?
I guess based on what the Texans did last year, but to me, the Texans and the Bengals with Joe Burrow are kind of neck and neck. I mean, people are forgetting. And by the way, the Bengals won games without Burrow last year. So
Jake Browning actually looked pretty
so
good at the end of the season.
That
yeah.
pretty much shows me they still got a pretty solid club.
Yeah.
You put that heck of a quarterback in there because to me he's the second best quarterback in the league.
Burrow.
Yes. I think they're
No,
kind of
he's right.
neck and neck.
He's right.
I think.
Says the LSU fan.
I mean, well, he's got them both. He's got his Kansas City quarterback at number 1 and his
And then
LSU
his
quarterback
LSU
at number 2.
and then Jaden Daniels is
Daniels
about
gonna be
to
the second
storm
pick,
into the
if not
league.
the first. We'll talk about that
We'll
one.
talk, yeah.
We'll talk about it some-
We'll
But
unpack that.
but
at a
getting
certain
back
point.
to it, Mixon's a good player. Texas is a good team. So I'll say yes. Because I don't think anything bad can come from it.
Yeah.
But am I just over the moon thinking this is going to put them over the top or something? No. I think they
Gotcha.
pretty much are where they are.
Okay. How you feel about it, Chris?
You know, I think this. I'm going to beat this horse to death. I like him to go to Houston. I think he's better than Singletary. Yes, he is. I had to look him up. I had to look up his age. I thought he was past his prime. The guy's only.
He's entering
He's
his
only-
8th season.
he's only
He's kind of
27,
in his
28 years
prime,
old.
yeah.
Yeah, he's only 27, 28 years old. So 27 actually. So, I mean, I was a little shocked by that he was as young as he is, but he's been in the league long enough, and
He was
he's,
their workhorse back
Yes.
as a rookie, and that's maybe
Yes.
why it
But see,
seems
that's
like
why-
It
he's
just
been.
seems like he's been in the league
Again,
forever.
Yeah, but I think sometimes we look at years played versus years on the earth, and I think
Yeah,
each situation
yeah.
is different. For Mixon, he was a workload back for a few years, number
Mm-hmm.
one. And number two, Cincinnati got rid of him.
So you're
Why?
right.
True,
Why?
that's a
It's
valid
like,
point.
was there a
Why?
reason
Why?
that they didn't want him?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a valid point. And
They
we-
know him better than everybody else, so why would they get rid of him?
That's a valid
True
point.
enough.
But I think this is gonna. It's another cog in the machine for Houston. With C.J. Stroud coming on, you've got Collins, Dell.
And we all know
And-
C.J. Stroud's the best quarterback in the league. Okay, I'm maybe exaggerating a little.
Especially
So we're gonna just stop this production now.
the camera just broke. It's
Yeah,
his camera, by the way.
yeah.
I mean, there
I'm
is
just
that.
taking my camera and going home. Wait, this is my home.
Wait,
You leave.
yeah, hold on a minute. Somebody should go somewhere.
Someone needs to go somewhere. I don't care where you go. You just can't be
You
here.
just can't stay here. You don't have to go. You
Anyways.
just can't stay here. Yeah.
But I think for them, it helps boost that team a little further. I mean, we talked about
good,
that
yeah.
with Diggs. It's just a little bit of a tweak. A little bit of tweak. Is it enough to push past the Ravens? I don't know.
They're in the running.
They're in the running, but
it's- yeah.
let's be honest.
They weren't that
The
far
next
from
guy
them
we're going to
yet.
talk about, which I'm excited to talk about because I don't want to see what they may do to my Chiefs. I don't want to see this.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'll let you. Why don't you go ahead and talk about what
So,
you feel about
Joe Mixon.
Mixon?
This was a surprising move to me because, in my opinion, Cincinnati. Okay, they went to the Super Bowl. What was it? 2 years ago?
Yeah.
3 years ago now. All right, they've got that same core. They've got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins. When all four of those guys are healthy, that's a pretty serious offense.
It is.
It
It's
seriously is.
Yeah.
That's a solid workhorse, not quite elite, but darn good running back, a great receiver tandem, and a great quarterback. I'm a proponent of when you've got all those pieces and they're working well together, unless there's some locker room trouble or something, whatever.
Why would you change
Why would you change that up? That's
Well,
the part I
especially
couldn't figure out.
Especially with Higgins either going this year or next year.
Right. Why would you
So-
also ship
yeah.
Joe Mixon? Now they, as we've already discussed in previous episode, they got Zach Moss, so I think they're probably maybe going to be okay
And they will.
as well as they were before. But I was just shocked to hear that Joe Mixon got traded. Now, is it good for the Texans? Yes, because I agree with you about Devin Singletary. The reason I'll give the edge to Joe Mixon, he's proven what we think Devin Singletary could do. We don't think Joe Mixon could be a solid lead back. We know that he is. So I think it's an upgrade for that.
And I agree.
respect.
It is an upgrade. Again,
Yeah.
like I said with previous
But
backs,
they were
though,
still okay
how
there.
Much
Yes.
better does it?
How much better does it make the team? I don't know, and we can't know until we see. Is it a better situation for Joe Mixon? Again, unless there is turmoil, I don't know that it's a better situation. Because again, if you keep that nucleus in Cincinnati together and they stay healthy, they're potentially as good as the Texans. I know they weren't last year, but again, they weren't all healthy.
And you can't even make the argument now that one division is stronger than the other. I'd still give a slight edge to the North, but for once the South is on the
But
come.
I was gonna say it's a slight
I mean,
edge at this point.
It used
It's
to be
not
a
what it
big
used to
one,
be.
but
the
so
gap
you can't,
is
so you can't even
narrowed.
say, yeah, well, I'm going to an easier division. Or no, it's
You're really
pretty
not.
competitive in both
Yeah.
of them now.
So a good situation for Mixon, yes. Is it better? I really don't know. I really wouldn't necessarily say that it is. I think he was in a good situation. He was a clear-cut lead back. Nobody was threatening him for playing time. Yes, Chase Brown's an exciting young player. He wasn't threatening Mixon for playing time. He's one of the best receivers in the league is his teammate. Another pretty darn good one's another teammate, and one of the top quarterbacks in the league. It's just keeping those guys healthy was the only thing. But
That's it.
Mixon, I mean, keeping that cog together, he was in a very good situation. So I'm torn as to whether this is better for him Is it an upgrade for the Texans? Sure, I see why they wanted him. Not sure about why Cincinnati.
Well, the
sent
thing
him
about
off.
Mixon is you couldn't lose either way. That's a good thing for him.
Exactly.
One might be better than the other slightly, depending on how you look at it. But he's not going from good to bad or bad to good.
No, he's going from good to
Yeah.
good, or potentially borderline great to great. He was. It's still a great situation because all the things I said about his teammates in Cincinnati, I'll say here. He's got a very good tight end, the best young quarterback in the league, who's on the rise. 2 great young receivers and a still pretty good aging one. He's surrounded. He's still got a good situation and a good defense. So, yes, it's a good situation. I don't know that I'd say it's that much better, if any. All right. Last running back on the list, and then we'll talk about a team that is the closest geographical to us and what they've done in the offseason. Last guy on the list, Derrick Henry to the Baltimore Ravens. Just because I want to save Talmadge's comments a little bit later. Chris, why don't you kick us off?
I'm kind of scared of this.
Of Derrick Henry as a human or just...
Well, both. I mean, but he scares me. He's a big guy. I mean, you're talking, 6'3", 247?
Yes.
And he runs as fast as he does, and he runs over people? Come on, I don't want to be in the front. I don't want to be in front of it. That's why I'm doing this. I'm in IT. I don't play football. But as a Chiefs fan, I'm scared of this because now you got a 2-headed monster. He is an upgrade from what they had in Dobbins and
Gus Edwards.
Those
guys were fine, but they're not Derrick Henry.
They're not Derrick Henry.
And nobody is,
You
really.
combine those guys, and they're not Derrick Henry. But now you
Right.
got that 2-headed monster. You don't have to worry. I mean, he's going to workhorse it is what they're going to do. I turn around and hand the ball to him, and then they're going to go, oh, did you forget about Mr. Jackson and this option threat that they're going to do? I guarantee they'll do something like that. And
If they don't,
they're dumb if they don't.
Yeah.
But then, they've done some dumb things in the past too. But,
but
from a Chiefs fan standpoint, and I'm scared of this, but I'm actually excited to see how he's going to change that team, the dynamic, the run game. Man, that's just going to be scary what he and Jackson can do to the league. So I think it's a good move for Baltimore. It's a great move for Baltimore.
Yeah.
I think they're going to reap the benefits. Derrick Henry, I'm sorry. I think it's a good move for Henry. He's going to a contender. Tennessee's had struggled over the last few years, and maybe this new GM that you were talking about,
Rand,
maybe they're going to put them in a situation where that turns around for them. So, but I think for what we're talking about here, I think for Derrick Henry and Baltimore, it's a win-win for both.
I would say it's a win for both for some of the reasons you mentioned. It was clear both sides were ready to move on.
Yeah.
He knew where Tennessee's franchise was. Now, while you can flip a franchise a lot quicker than you used to be able to do it, there's no guarantee that Tennessee's a winning team this year. He's getting up there in years, and he had a perfect situation to go to. Let's face it. When we knew he was going to be a free agent, even as a Tennessee fan, people have asked me, friends, how do you feel? I had a year to get used to this. When they drafted Tajay Spears, we knew Derrick Henry. See, good teams, you can see that. I'm sticking to Tennessee because I know them better than anybody else, but I don't know if you guys remember a defensive tackle that was good for them for years, Jarrell Casey. When they drafted Big Jeff Simmons, you knew that in a year, Jarrell Casey was going to be gone.
They were
guess what?
preparing
He was.
for,
And that's what good teams do. So I knew it was coming. Both sides knew it was coming, especially when they got rid of Vrabel. That's just basically saying we're changing our philosophy.
When
and you don't fit
Vrabel
our
was gone,
philosophy.
it was like the team is
Right.
changing dynamics.
And I think Derek knew too. Look, I'm getting older. Yeah, we might be good because you can flip a team pretty quickly nowadays, but we don't know we're going to be good. There's a few options out there that I know are going to be good. The only 3 teams I heard that he even had interest in or had interest in him, and one turned out they said they didn't, which is our hometown team here in Dallas.
Yeah.
Of course, Baltimore or the Eagles. Those were the 3 teams. I could make cases for all 3.
Yeah.
Baltimore is the best case for the reason you brought up. And people forget, this is also going to open up things for Zay Flowers.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now, and it's going to make Baltimore, who always has the leading rushing team in football, even more so.
Yeah, they just added Derrick Henry.
I mean, it's not even because of what Derrick does with the ball. It's going to open it up because you've got a quarterback like we talked about that can run on the edges too. So now that linebacker has to make a decision when he crashes. That defensive end, he's got to make a decision if you're running a 4-3 versus a 3-4, if he crashes or not. Because if you do, then Lamar's pitching it.
Yep.
If you don't, Lamar's keeping it. So
NFL, you don't technically see option football, but you basically can with them.
it's-
Not
it's-
like the triple
well,
option in college. is
Well,
what
yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's just the RPOs. That's what
but
he's talking about is the RPOs.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
They basically are going to be running some
and
option.
then you can still go to the standard play action fake that always been good.
Oh, and you know
now,
they will.
They're going to need a receiver that can run crossing routes like A.J. Brown, which I'm not sure Zay Flowers is more of that type of receiver. But if they can get a receiver that can run the shallow cross and the deep crosses,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3,
and then,
fake it, take it out of the belly, toss it. It's going to make their offense so much more versatile. Derrick Henry, to me, if he rushes for 1,100 yards, that's all he needs to do. That's all he needs to do. If he's healthy and rushes for 1,100 and gets double-digit touchdowns, it's a perfect fit for them. But to your question, you didn't quite say it, but I know this is where you're going with Kansas City. Still don't think they're good enough to beat Kansas City.
Oh, I'm nervous about it.
Still
But
don't think they're good
I
enough.
think
we'll see.
I think if they had Derrick Henry last year, they win that AFC Championship game.
Now that's possible.
Well, that's possible because they darn near did.
That's possible.
Anyway,
But we're talking about 2024.
But-
we don't worry about
Yeah.
2023.
But I think KC knows their weaknesses. They've
Yeah,
done some things to address them.
They
and I
do.
still take. And I'm not sure. Now, I still put them ahead of Houston because that question, I think we talked
Yeah.
about that previously. Still do, but not by much. So it's going to be interesting. That
will.
top's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so you're thinking Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston in
Probably.
that AFC?
yes.
And
I mean, that's
think
kind of
so,
the players that have moved around. That's kind of the teams
And-
we've talked about.
I
With
think
one
so.
exception, I'm curious with Cincinnati and
Well,
Pittsburgh.
that's true.
I'm
Pitts-
curious
Yeah.
with those two
Yeah.
because they might find their way in there too.
I'm
I
not so
say-
concerned about Pittsburgh, but Cincy, I've forgotten
I
about
was about to say,
them.
out of the two, I'd say
Cincy,
Cincy first.
I think
Cincy
so,
will have
too.
something to say about this. So if
Yeah.
Lamar, if Jamar sees this, he'll have something to say.
So yes, no question.
That's for
but,
sure.
but to wrap that all up, and I know because Derrick Henry's a Titan fan, the thing for me is I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I should have tear over because I had a whole year to prepare.
Right.
And then some players, I hate it now, but if they're gonna go anywhere, I kind of know they're going to Baltimore. Steve McNair,
Yeah.
Samari Roll, Derek Mason.
Okay, Derek Mason. That's who I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I was like, they had a pretty good receiver.
They
Derek
all
Mason.
went there too. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, if you're gonna go somewhere, just join them. and if you would have gone to Dallas, okay, so did Eddie George. So go on.
True enough.
So that's where I am with it.
I think this is a very good move for both parties. I think Henry was great with Tennessee. Like you said, it was pretty clear that they were ready to move on. I would like to have seen him stay with the Titans. They're not like my team like it is with Talmadge, but still, you just want it. When you got a player as great as Derrick Henry, I just think it would have been great if they could have held
one
on to him.
uniform, yeah.
But
Yeah.
once they decided it was time to move on, then okay. And a lot of people talk about, oh, he's getting older. He's slowing down. Okay, he may not be the Derrick Henry that got 2,000 yards a few years ago, but guess what? He's still Derrick Henry. He's still 6'3", 247 pounds. He's got the best combination of size, power, and speed that I've seen in any running back in history. Maybe a story for another day. There's a few guys that we could mention. He's
Campbell.
got the best.
Earl Campbell.
Yep.
Yeah, but the combination, but Henry's bigger. That's what I'm saying. The
Not
combination,
his thighs.
But
maybe not his thighs.
but they
okay.
both hit you with the same amount of
But
force.
they hit you with the same force. Henry can outrun most people. He's still a formidable running back. He had almost 1,200 yards rushing a year ago. He's still a very good running back, and
And keep in mind, Tennessee had the worst line in the league.
they
Yeah.
did
Worst line in the league.
worse than New York.
Worst line in the league.
Okay,
Especially
but
pass blocking. Overall, maybe New York was
Okay.
worse, but pass blocking, clearly the worst. And run blocking wasn't much better.
wasn't much better. Derrick Henry going to Baltimore, and I think too dangerous combination with him
Oh,
and Lamar
absolutely.
Jackson. I'm trying to think if there's ever been a more frightening combination of an athletic quarterback and a monster running back. Maybe there has. I'm not thinking of
Unless
one right
Michael
now.
Vick had some monster
I was
back,
gonna say, I
think
can't
about
think.
it.
Yeah.
Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick.
I mean,
I can't think of another that's this potent.
Keith
So
Byers.
yeah, Keith Byers was Keith Byers, but Derrick Henry is Derrick
But
Henry.
yeah.
Henry,
Yeah.
and think
There's
about
not,
this.
I don't think.
In that Baltimore offense, Gus Edwards had 13 rushing touchdowns a year ago. Derrick Henry, it wouldn't shock me to see him get 16 or 17 because he's faster and he's bigger and nothing against Gus
If
Edwards,
they're
but
making
he's
a
just
run
better.
for the Super Bowl, he better.
He better get
Yeah,
that
he
many
better.
touchdowns and maybe seems less significant. But you mentioned opening up for Zay Flowers, which I concur. I will say, too, there's another player on their team, not as many people know about, spent a lot of last year injured, but a guy that I'm a really big fan of, Keaton Mitchell. If he comes back healthy, now you've got one of the fastest, most explosive guys in the league coming off your bench when defenses are already physically worn out from Henry and Lamar Jackson.
Which he's going to need that.
And
The
then you
days of-
put Henry
yeah,
on the
yeah,
bench
yeah,
and bring
yeah,
Keaton
yeah,
Mitchell
yeah,
into the
yeah.
game too.
Yeah.
And with Zay Flowers, that offense just
Because
got.
Derek's not going to play on third down.
No, he's not. And
So-
he needs his rest at this age too. Bring Keaton Mitchell in. This offense just got that much more dangerous with a healthy Keaton Mitchell and now Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers has a year of experience. And don't forget Mark Edwards is coming off an injury.
Right.
Mark Edwards.
Mark
Andrews.
Andrews, yeah.
Mark Edwards used to be a fullback for the Patriots.
He's probably coming
And
out
there you go,
off
Mark
injury
Edwards.
too, rolling
Yeah,
out
he
of bed
might
every
be.
day.
He might. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely was pretty good in his absence last year. This offense just got that much more dangerous. So, great move on both sides, in my opinion. Just a little bit more that we're going to touch on, and thanks to all of you that have stuck with us for the 14 hours. Believe it or not, we trimmed down this list quite a bit right before we rolled the camera.
Yeah.
But let's discuss for a moment the fact that we all live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Let's talk about the team that said they were all in and then let all of the players on this list go other places. I mean, what do we have to say about that, realistically?
I'm sure they have a plan. The only problem I have with it is if you're going to say you're all in and not show it, then why'd you say it? I think we know why, because the owner can't keep his mouth shut. And I'm not saying it's the wrong move. If they trust their roster and they've proven they're great at drafting, if they think they can fill all their holes drafting, I don't necessarily believe that, because I think in this league you have to use every avenue to improve your
Yeah,
team.
why not?
But at the same time, I'm not knocking their plan. If that's their plan, fine. Then why are you sitting here telling me you're all in? Number one, I got to assume that every team is all in every year.
Right. If you're
Otherwise,
not, then
why are you
even
playing?
Why are you in
But
the
if-
business you're
yeah,
in?
but if your point is when I say all in, I mean we're going to explore every avenue. Well, you
Yeah.
didn't do that, so
No.
you didn't meet either requirement of that statement.
Right.
So why did you say it? So I'm not knocking what they've done. I mean, you can, but that's
Yeah,
their choice.
but-
It's their team. But when you say that, okay, well, when are you going to show me? Because everybody has draft picks. So are you all in because you're drafting players? Well, in that case, everybody's
Guess
in.
what?
'Cause
So
everybody's
is every
drafting
other
players.
team, yeah.
So I don't know why that statement was said. It was almost like I have to say it to give my
It's almost like
fans
I need
hope.
to show people
Right.
that I can prove something and then sit on
But
my
if you have
hands.
to tell me, then that means you know you haven't shown me. So I don't
Yeah,
I don't understand why that
Well,
was
it's kind
even
of the
said.
same concept, and I've told people this for years. If you're the smartest person in the room, you don't go around telling everybody because you don't need to.
They know
If
it.
you
They
truly
see
are
it.
the smartest person in the room, it's going to be evident. And I used to tell people when I was in leadership at both my Chick-fil-A's, if I have to walk in the room every day and tell y'all who's in charge, it's because I'm really not. I don't need to do that because y'all know, because I've proven it. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys owner, I don't have to make a statement that we're all in. Guess what? If I'm not, then you're going to think I'm an imbecile. Like, of course I'm all in. I own this team. It's my life, my livelihood. But if I'm all in, I'm not going to watch Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and even Austin Eckler, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins sign other places. Zach Moss, I'm not going to watch him sign somewhere else. I'm not going to let Tony Pollard, who I personally might have held on to, walk and then not go after at least Aaron Jones or some of these other guys. I don't know the
Or
logic
Derrick Henry
behind
lives
it.
in Dallas.
Who?
Derrick Henry lives in Dallas.
Yeah. Why in the world? By the way, Derek, stop by sometime. We'll talk to you live here on camera. I'm not letting any of those guys slip through my grasp if I'm not holding on to Tony Pollard, because guess what? Now they really have to draft a rookie running back and hope like heck that person's ready to start on day one
And you have
be
to
productive.
spend draft capital
You got to spend draft capital.
on a non
A guy that hadn't played one single down in the league
right,
so
and
far.
it's a non-premium position.
Mm-hmm.
I've got other needs. I've got a linebacker that just retired, and I was weekend linebacker anyway. That's why teams could run the
Right.
ball down my throat. That's another non-premium
You've got a
position.
great offensive
now
tackle
you
that's no longer with
you
the
should be
team.
using draft picks on defensive ends, quarterbacks, receivers, cornerbacks. Okay, that's where you spend draft capital.
Right.
Premium positions. They're forced to pin, or at least high draft picks. Yeah, you fill out your
Yeah.
roster with
Yeah.
5th, 6th, 7th rounders, but they've
'Cause you
got to
can get
spend
good running backs in those rounds.
They basically their top 3 rounds. They're going to have to go after linebackers and running backs.
Exactly.
I just don't
and they
see-
didn't have to. That's what.
Right.
I think that's what. And Chris hadn't said much, but I think that's kind of what's got us worked up. They put themselves in a position to where they now have to do that. They didn't have to. There were many viable options that we've talked about on it. Even Alexander Madison, and I don't mean that as an insult. We talked about him earlier.
They did-
They didn't even go after somebody like him.
They did. I can't remember his name, but they did sign the
Royce
backup.
Freeman.
There you
Oh.
go.
They did sign Royce
They signed
Freeman.
Freeman.
And I'm not insulting
They
him.
re-signed Rico Dowdle.
Again,
Yeah,
I mean,
again,
he's
that's
just a guy.
our point.
It's just a guy.
But
So-
what even got me though is not even Pollard. They let some of their backup their rotational defensive linemen go.
Yes.
They let their offensive center go. I can understand letting the tackle go because he's older, but at the same
But
and he's always
still.
hurt. But you're gonna let your tackle go and your center go. So now one of the strengths of your team for years, although it's not as good as it's been in the
No,
past,
but the offensive
but it's
line's
still been a
always
pretty
been,
good
yeah.
strength. Now you've got to replace that, so that's not a strength anymore.
No.
Okay. You've got questions at the quarterback position if you're going to increase him or get rid of him. Okay. You still need another receiver. So the needs you had going
Right.
in, you still have.
You still
and
need
now
to
you've got
address-
more needs on top of that. But you're all in though.
Look, I think a lot of this says one thing is Jerry is fine with 8-8 or 8-9 or something or whatever. It used to be 8-8, but now they added one, so it's
Right.
8-9.
8-9 or even 9-8. That's
Yeah,
not
9-8. I mean,
we're
he
not
doesn't.
talking about a good
he
season
doesn't
there
care.
either.
He's making money hand over fist. That's all he cares about. I mean, and that's one reason why I'm no longer a Cowboy fan, just because Jerry Jones has ruined that franchise. Jerry thinks he's the smartest man in the room. And,
He doesn't ever say it though.
He won't say it, but he acts it.
That was a joke. He implies
He
it
probably
by,
does, but you know, I think with the Jason Garrett being the head coach for 10, 11, 12, whatever that time
Whatever
period,
it
I think
was, yeah.
it was way too long. You know, I can't get rid of my adopted son or whatever, you know, family member. That's like, as a fan, you're going, get rid of him. He is not the answer. And he was just fine with just being mediocre and barely making the playoffs because they're going to do what? They're going to get their money. And he's not going to spend on high-end free agents. He's not going to get a Derrick Henry, which is unfortunate because he would have
Derrick Henry would have been a great
would have been a
fit
great fit
in
here.
Dallas
He
as
really
well.
would have.
But here's the thing about it though. We're just talking about getting players to fill roles. You don't have to spend a ton in free agency. He can
Right.
still not spend a ton and make some wise choices
Yeah.
to round out your team in free agency. And he didn't. I'm not even
But he
talking about the
didn't do
first day free agents. You can get a second, third day free
No,
agent.
you could have
And-
waited and still gotten, like I said, Zach Moss,
Right.
Aaron Jones.
And he didn't do it. It's like, I guess we're all saying the same thing, but I'll end it with this. When you're not using every avenue to improve your team, because I don't think you should rely totally on the draft, rely totally on free
When
agency,
there's other
rely
op-
totally
when-
on
yeah,
trade.
but when there's
Do a
multiple
little bit of all
avenues,
of it,
yeah.
and make what makes sense for you and your team, and you let your offensive line go, and you let your defensive line rotation go. It's not just the premium positions; it's all over the
It's
field.
kind of everywhere now.
And then you look at the teams in your division, especially the Eagles,
Oh, yeah,
who was
They
already
upgraded,
your
and
competition
they
anyway.
already,
Even though
yeah.
they crapped out the second half of last year, but they still ended up with
Still,
basically the same record.
yeah.
I think they were one game behind.
Something like that.
So now you look at what they've done
Mm-hmm.
compared to what you've done. How can you not pick the Eagles? Now, We'll never know until the season starts. There's
Right.
still a long time to go.
Till the season.
Dallas can have a great draft, make trades. Plus, there's free agents that get cut after June 1st. I mean, there's all. It's not
Yeah.
over, but
Yeah.
just like right now,
What we've seen so
doesn't-
far.
how can you
Doesn't
not
look
say Philadelphia's going to win that division? And frankly,
Oh, I don't
win
see
it
how.
fairly easily.
I was
Oh,
just saying, I don't think it'll be even difficult at this point. Again, when y'all see this, the draft will have happened. We'll have answers to some of this, but as of today, I agree 100% with everything that you said. I don't know any way to look at it any differently than
Yeah.
that. And if I'm in Jerry Jones' position, I'm doing everything I can. I'm gonna look at every free agent running back, and I'm gonna have a distinct list. If I don't get Derrick Henry, I'm not gonna cry over it. But Saquon's getting a call from me. If I don't get him, guess what? We're moving to this guy. Josh Jacobs is getting an offer. I'm grabbing one of those guys. I'm doing everything I can to grab one of those guys and address the linebacker issue and all that, and then go into the draft and look at tackles and another receiver. You've got arguably one of the top 2 to 3 receivers in the league in CeeDee Lamb. Yeah. Get somebody on the other side of the field that can at least complement him. And we've said it already, there's so many good receivers in this draft, but now you can't think about that because you got to plug these other holes. Anyway, we could all keep ranting.
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up with that. But I do have one more thing we could talk about. Talmadge, is there anything you want to ask Chris about this offseason and how he feels?
Well, when it happened, I wanted to pick up the phone and make that call. Mr. Snead coming to Tennessee. What are your thoughts?
Oh,
Sending
okay,
luxurious
yeah.
Snead to Talmadge's Tennessee Titans. That's got a good ring. Talmadge's Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know what? Look, I mean, we've talked about this before, and not on camera, just back and forth, going back. You have a salary cap. You have only so much money.
Yeah.
You know, were they going to put their money on Chris Jones, or are they going to put it on Snead? Ultimately, who's going to be the one person that is going to make a big difference in the game? And it's going to be Chris Jones. They already had Snead's replacement. Okay, McDuffie is a stud. He is. I mean, he's proved it in the last several years. Even coming out as a rookie, he was proving it. I hate losing Snead because he was he was a great player. But
He's
you know
the guy
what?
that caused the fumble on Zay Flowers at the goal line that helped put him in the Super Bowl.
He won the game right there with the fumble.
If he didn't punch that out at the right exact, another split second,
and it was over.
And the fumble wouldn't have mattered because he was almost he almost broke the plane.
Well, it wouldn't have been the game because Pat still would have just come back. But
look,
potentially yes.
He's like a Jedi. He would have done
he
something.
Come back, but
probably. I tend to
but I
say
know what you
yes,
mean.
But look, I'll be honest. I mean, I hated losing him, but you can only spread that money out so far.
And that's the thing.
Right? And
you
that's
could
the
have
thing.
kept him, but then we'd be saying, well, where did Chris Jones go?
Right. Chris Jones went to Tennessee.
They're both great. So
no, he wouldn't have because he wouldn't afford it. But still, he went to a good organization, and I'm happy about that.
We're building. I don't know if we are a good organization, but we are.
I was trying to make you feel good.
But we've already discussed they've made some good moves this offseason.
So I think it's a great move for Tennessee, obviously, to get him. And they only gave up what did they give up? It was a late round pick. It wasn't like a
it was
like
a seventh and a conditional third or fourth next year.
That's not a lot to give up for
it wasn't much.
Yeah.
It wasn't much that they gave up for him, and that's a little disappointing. But again, I think you said it before earlier today is you got to find a dance partner. And sometimes you can't find a dance partner, for whatever reason you can't. And so look, they got what they could get for him, and that's what they're gonna do. So I'm all good with it.
Here's what I thought was interesting about the whole thing: when it first came out that they were going to let him seek a trade.
Yep.
It never crossed my mind that Tennessee would have an interest. Okay. When it came out that they did, and it came down between them and the Colts, then I really wanted him because I didn't want a division rival getting it.
Yeah, you don't want Jerry Snead to play
And
against.
as good as Snead was, I didn't really, because unlike you, I watched a lot of Kansas City games. I didn't watch every one of them.
Yeah.
And I knew he was good. I knew his reputation, don't get me wrong. But I did a deep dive once I found out he was possibly coming to the Titans, and he's 10 times better than I even thought.
My
He
question
didn't-
is,
he
how
didn't-
was he not an All-Pro last year?
That's what I don't understand.
I don't
either.
understand that.
Yeah.
He didn't give a
That
touchdown
don't
all
make any
year.
sense. He's,
And he covered every team's best receiver.
Yep.
He wasn't one of these corners that stayed in a stationary spot.
No.
He
He
shadowed
followed all
the
over
and
the
they all were below their season averages.
Yes.
And most of them well below. Especially the guy we've talked about from Buffalo all day long.
yeah.
He shut him down twice.
He, as I
Yeah,
say, he didn't
exactly.
just hold him in check. He shut him down 2 times.
But the one thing I'll say about Kansas City is, I get the salary cap. I understand that. I also know that they already had McDuffie. And I'll tell you this. They've proven they can draft corners.
Yeah.
Snead came out of Louisiana State in what, the 3rd or 4th round? It wasn't like he was
Yeah.
some.
No,
Yeah,
he wasn't
no.
first round.
Yeah.
He wasn't a McDuffie. He wasn't a first
he
round.
wasn't the
pick.
Thorpe Award winner, the Lot Impact Trophy
So they
winner.
did what they had to do as a team. On Tennessee's side, I'm glad we didn't have to give up as much as you thought we would have had to give
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to sign him to a $20 million a year contract, which we thought. And they structured his contract to where it's not a big time cap hit. So for those reasons, and they signed Awuzie from the Bengals.
Yeah,
So they solved their problem
Yeah.
at the defensive backfield in one offseason.
Yeah.
They've got
Yeah.
2 of the best corners right now. Jeff Simmons coming back from injury. I'm telling you, I don't know how good Tennessee's going to be because it's a brand new coach, and you don't know. I
He's
don't know how
never
good
known.
he
Too
is.
many questions.
Plus
with
that division, you got Houston to deal with. The Colts, if their quarterback's healthy, we'll see what he can do. Jacksonville, I think they've taken a bit of a step back, but
Yeah.
they're not a dog.
They're
No.
still.
No,
So-
they're not Carolina.
Tennessee could very well still be the 4th place team in that division, but I think it could be a division where 10 wins it and 7 wins is last place. I think it could be
Well, yeah.
that close.
Could be.
Because Tennessee's done a ton in the offseason. It's just, this list has proven, I'm always into the NFL offseason, don't get me wrong, but for some reason this year seems like there was just a little more juice, and I think it's because of the running back position,
Yeah.
which I never would have guessed out of all the positions
Yeah.
that running back would be the driver in this offseason, but it really has been.
It has been.
It really has been.
We've spent more time on the running backs than we did the receivers and quarterbacks, maybe combined, or maybe the same amount
I'm
of
pretty
time.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So,
So-
no, good. This loved it. Loved it. Can't wait to see what the draft will do.
Yeah.
You guys are looking at this thinking all the stuff they're saying doesn't matter because this guy got drafted and that guy got
Right,
drafted, so
right.
we look like some fools. But we're not fools yet because the draft hadn't happened.
At least not for this reason. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you guys so much. This has been indubitably a lot of fun. If nobody else likes it, we did. This was a lot
I
of
enjoyed
fun.
it.
Hey, I got to get out from behind the
And
camera.
Chris got to come on this side of the camera. Thank you all so much for taking time to join us, especially those of you that are still watching. If you do like the video, please like it. Please subscribe. It'll help me continue to bring you this type of content and notify you when more content is available. For my producing partner, Chris Black, for Talmadge, Roger Varnado, the third, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Y'all have a great week, and I hope I see you again real soon. J.K. Dobbins.